Chapter 1156. Why is this happening? Why would a real god appear in the world in the cup? Also, is the Lu Chang who was just killed a real person or an NPC? Qin Guang fell into an unprecedented state of confusion and distress. As the Redeemer, what kind of role should I play in this killing mission? What kind of changes will the integration of the real world and the real world bring to me? What is going on with the outside world? Lu Chang, who was rolling on the ground, was still screaming. His chest was pierced by someone's hand like a claw. He would not survive. More and more blood gushed out from his chest and back. He coughed wildly, but he could only cough up more blood from his mouth. His miserable state made everyone look at him. At this moment there was another scream from another place. Qin Guang quickly turned his gaze again. It was a middle-aged woman. She was covering her throat, but blood was still gushing out from between her fingers. In front of her, there was a calm woman who was shaking her fingers and walking away. Drops of blood were constantly dripping from her fingertips. Just as everyone's attention was on the woman whose throat was cut, there was another loud noise next to them. It was a white man flying in the air and then falling to the ground like a piece of leather. At the position where the man took off, a brown-haired woman was slowly withdrawing her right leg. At this moment, Qin Guang wasn't the only one who noticed their unusual behavior. The others also cried out as they stood up from the ground with tears streaming down their faces. They maintained a distance from everyone around them and looked at anyone that tried to approach them with vigilance. Qin Guang stood up straight. He subconsciously wanted to stop this kind of thing, because he found that everyone who attacked the people around him was a calm person who was constantly approaching the blonde man. Although the two people behind did not speak, according to the information revealed by the calm person who attacked first, Qin Guang judged that all the calm people who were approaching the blonde man were in the same camp. Since their people could say such words as lowly mortals, then they were definitely not ordinary humans. It didn't matter if they were NPCs or not. They definitely weren't on his side, and they definitely weren't on his side. Qin Guang thought to himself. Anyway, no matter how pretentious I am, I can't possibly say something like lowly mortals and squash them to death like a fly, right? Forget it, the heavenly Holy Grail still has some humanity. At least it left a group of targets for me to kill without any psychological pressure. He really couldn't see through the truth of this world of slaughter, and he didn't know whether the people he killed were real people or insignificant NPCs, but at least Qin Guang could find an enemy in his heart. He stood up, intending to do something. At this moment, in his heart, or perhaps in everyone's heart, a voice rang out at the same time. Lu Chang is dead and has been reset. The poor sales manager who had her breasts pierced first was completely dead. Qin Guang turned to look in Lu Chang's direction, but found that after this person left a large pool of blood on the ground, his body had inexplicably started to ionize and gradually disappeared. What disappeared was not only his body, even the blood that had completely mixed with the sand on the arena ground also turned into light smoke-like ions that continuously floated up and quickly dissipated. Asakura Shizumi is dead and has been reset. Clayson Pablo is dead and has been reset. Very soon, 2 more prompts were heard. The other 2 people who were attacked later also disappeared completely, just like Lu Chang. Qin Guang's mind that had just calmed down was once again thrown into chaos. Reset? What the hell is this? Wasn't the death here real death? Was it reset? Then what did this reset mean? Was it referring to people dying like a lamp going out? Or was it like a computer system that was poisoned, then a system restore and then resurrected on the spot? Wait, why am I slowly starting to believe that these are real people? If it was really a so-called reset, then these players shouldn't be real people. Only computer systems and NPCs could be restored by the system. Ruri, tell me if I'm right. Ruri, come out for a moment and give me a reasonable explanation. He finally remembered that he still had someone who wasn't worth relying on that he could rely on. But he didn't expect Ruri to say this. Did you find anything? Don't disturb me, I also want to figure out what the hell is going on. Well, Ruri didn't outperform her usual performance. Her performance was still as unreliable as ever. It was only a little better than before when she didn't know anything. At least she seemed to be working hard, but this made people feel even more despair. In the past, Qin Guang thought that she only knew how to pretend that she didn't understand and that she was pretending to be confused. It seemed that this time she was really confused. Then tell me, are these people alive or NPCs? That's all I want to know. Why don't you try killing a few yourself and find out? *CKU. Then are these bastards who have no regard for human life gods like you? I don't know either. Is there no one you know here? Oh no, familiar gods? Are you kidding me? What kind of existence do I have in the endless realm of gods? Among the billions of gods, there are no more than 50 gods who are qualified to talk to me. Even if these guys really come from the endless realm of gods, it's normal that I don't know them, okay? Are there really so many gods? Billions of them? I was just lazy and said an imaginary number. In fact, it's only a lot more than that. Forget it, I really can't count on you. Thunder-throwing tower. What's the use of you? Why don't you try scolding me again? Lord Ruri is as beautiful as a fairy, gentle, kind, virtuous, kind and amiable. Get lost, you're just like that. I've long seen through you. He. Wait, the aura of that blonde man is a little familiar, let me try. Ruri suddenly changed the topic. Qin Guang was overjoyed, but the next moment, Qin Guang heard Ruri scream. Not good. What's going on? Qin Guang, you really have to ask for more this time. Following her scream, Qin Guang inexplicably found that her voice gradually became softer and softer, and he couldn't even hear the last word, ask for more blessings, clearly before it came to an abrupt end. Lord Ruri? Ruri? Where is she? Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Does this mean that Ruri's communication with the slaughter realm has been cut off? Is the Holy Grail so awesome? The signal is blocked? The user you dialed is not in the service area? Since he could no longer count on Ruri, Qin Guang could only focus his attention back on the situation in front of him. Regarding this XX died reset command, everyone present had different reactions. Those who were calm seemed very calm, as if they had already expected it and had seen through the affairs of the world. They still approached the blonde man step by step. As for the ordinary people who had all kinds of reactions before, and the remaining 4 or 5 who were calm and did not go to the blonde man's side, they showed completely different states. Some had already been scared to the point of hysteria, as if they had gone crazy, but there were also some who had endured the initial panic and forced themselves to calm down. They tightly frowned and thought, desperately trying to maintain their rationality in the situation in front of them that was beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. In any case, only by calming themselves down could they survive, and not be like the 3 people who had been reset, being eliminated before the game even started. No one knew what the so-called reset meant. It could be death, or it could be that after their memories were erased, it would be as if nothing had happened. It would be good if it was the second possibility, but no one dared to gamble. In any case, it was definitely right to think of a way to not be so miserable. When everyone began to be vigilant, it was not difficult for others to find the direction in which these calm and collected people were moving. At this time there were about more than 10 people gathered there. They were whispering to each other, and they even seemed to be looking forward to it with excitement. The strange situation that was incomprehensible in the eyes of others seemed to be a game that could arouse their interest in the eyes of these people. He did not know how others would see it, but with Qin Guang's judgment, with his mastery of acting and understanding of psychology, those calm and collected people were looking at the situation with the mentality of a game. Qin Guang gritted his teeth. Sure enough, those who were not of the same race would have different intentions. What a lowly mortal. However, they did not succeed again. Everyone maintained the greatest vigilance against anyone who tried to approach them. Even if it was just a little bit closer, it would arouse hostility. Of course, even if these ordinary players were fully vigilant, it would at most cause the calm and collected people to waste one more second when slaughtering them. What really prompted them to stop was that the blonde man finally spoke. He simply opened his mouth and said softly, "Okay, come over first. These humans may still be of some use. This is our first mission and we must not completely fail. Otherwise, our projections will be erased." His voice was very soft, but it should have reached the ears of every calm and collected person. Under the eyes of Qin Guang, several people who were about to forcibly attack immediately stopped and walked towards him. However, the other players should not have heard it at all. They all looked blankly at the calm and collected people who ignored them and turned to walk away. However, Qin Guang, who hid in the corner and watched coldly, heard this sentence. He frowned slightly. When the blonde man spoke, he used a special power. It gave Qin Guang a similar feeling as when the man stabbed someone's chest with his hand. This is the power of God? But why can I hear it? Well, my mind is really too chaotic today. I also have to calm myself down as soon as possible. Oh, right, whether the other ordinary players' panic to calm down is a real human reaction or the acting skills of the NPCs given by the Holy Grail, it seems that there is actually no need for me to care. If this so-called killing mission really requires me to wield a butcher's knife, do I have any other choice other than to do it myself? Let's just pretend that I am lying to myself. Let's assume that they are really living people. But that reset should be the same as reinstalling a computer system. Qin Guang told himself this. Like the others, regardless of whether he believed what he saw or not, he also had to calm down. At least I have found a suitable imaginary enemy for myself. That's right, it is the half of the calm and collected people led by the blonde man. After a few more minutes, more than 40 calm and collected people gathered together. There was no longer any sound coming from their direction. Qin Guang felt that they should have used God's power to create a barrier. As for the others, they were still scattered around the ancient Roman Colosseum with a diameter of 1 kilometer. Soft sobs came from different directions from time to time. Those who could remain rational and calm were always the minority. At this time, the electronic voice of the Holy Grail finally came again. All players, please pay attention. The killing mission will officially start in 5 minutes. Mission 1, kill all the vengeful spirits. Following this mission announcement, an extremely ugly image appeared in everyone's mind. It was as if it was forced into their heads. It looked like a black blob floating in the air like flowing gel. Drop after drop of unknown liquid kept falling from this ghostly thing to the ground. Then, as if attracted by a magnet, the liquid slowly floated up from below and fused with its body. This cycle was similar to the cycle of rain, clouds, and water vapor in the atmosphere. This vengeful spirit did not have legs, but it had 2 pairs of huge claws that were completely disproportionate to its body. In addition, it also did not have a head. It looked like a piece of rag that was thrown into the air. However, this rag not only swayed in the air, but it also let out an ear-piercing whistle. Below the image there were also some words. Monster card, beginner vengeful spirit description, beginner vengeful spirit born from the cemetery. It is bred from the evil thoughts of many dead people when they were alive. Agility type phantom beast. It has astonishing speed and sharp claws. It has an innate hatred for the living. It will tear apart all living things in front of it, including grass. Seeing this monster card, some of the normal players covered their faces and screamed. Some of them looked serious. Some of them gritted their teeth and clenched their fists, weighing the strength of the 2 sides. It was quite hopeless. Although according to the monster card, this vengeful spirit was not big, about the size of a normal person, the latter half of the instruction manual made people feel hopeless no matter how they looked at it. Qin Guang let out a long sigh of relief. No matter what, this was good. He did not need to worry about whether he would become a bloody butcher. Fighting monsters was what the old man was best at. Everyone quiet down. Listen to me. Listen to me. At this time, a middle-aged man with a sturdy figure in the center of the Colosseum shouted loudly. Qin Guang had noticed him before. He was one of the 4 or 5 normal players who quickly calmed down. It seemed that this brother had realized the severity of the situation and wanted to form an alliance. Sure enough, many people's attention was attracted by him. The man waved his arms confidently and continued, although I don't know what happened, I was training the players in my club. Then I inexplicably came here. Even more inexplicably, I have to face this killing mission. But there is no doubt that we have 2 enemies. One is the vengeful spirit written in this monster card. The other is those people, right? The man said and pointed to the distant tranquil faction members who were coldly watching from the sidelines. People nodded one after another. It was clear that his analysis was very popular. They are very strong. They can easily crush us. This vengeful spirit looks very scary. So, shouldn't we form an alliance first? Let me introduce myself. I am a retired Sanda athlete. Now I am a coach. If you are willing to believe me, come to me. We can only survive this strange killing mission if we unite. The middle-aged man waved his hand and said in a very provocative manner. From this old man, Qin Guang smelled something similar to the old men in Yanjing. There was also a boy who was about 15 or 16 years old. He was not tall and looked to be a little more than 1.6 meters. His face was pale and he looked very malnourished, but Qin Guang's own image had been changed, and he didn't know if this young man's real body was like this. His behavior was also very special. He was neither excited and curious like those calm people, nor flustered and confused like ordinary people. Sometimes he was calm, but sometimes his eyes flashed with a crazy light. Qin Guang read his emotions. This was ecstasy? Qin Guang silently ridiculed him. If you were not an NPC but a real ordinary person, you would probably be a serious patient in an online novel, thinking that you are the protagonist just like that unlucky manager named Lu Chang. But his performance was much better than Lu Chang's. He understood the principle of shooting the bird that sticks out, so he didn't rush to communicate with people like Lu Chang and invite a fatal disaster. The 90 or so people who had entered had spontaneously divided into 2 groups. Only then did the young man follow the crowd and approach the crowd. However, as he approached, he still looked at everyone with great vigilance, unlike some people who had completely let their guard down. Gradually, the crowd became tighter and tighter, and the distance between people also became smaller and smaller. No one was in a hurry to reveal their names and identities in the real world. Instead, they looked at each other with a forced smile with vigilance. Suddenly, there was another poochie sound from the crowd, followed by another blood-curdling scream. Everyone turned to look and saw a child, who looked like a little girl running through the crowd towards the golden-haired man with a sinister smile. She shouted proudly, "Ha, stupid mortals, this is so fun. If it wasn't for Master Yuting's order, I would really want to strangle you all to death." As she ran, she shook her right hand. Her right hand was holding a ball of blood. Behind her, a man clutched his chest, and slowly knelt down with a look of disbelief. His eyes were filled with despair and confusion. Qin Guang's brows furrowed tightly. He had noticed earlier that the little girl had called the man, uncle, very sweetly and cloyingly. Then, the man had picked her up without any wariness and said something like, "Little girl, don't be afraid, uncle will protect you." He hadn't expected her to die a horrible death in the blink of an eye. Everyone was even more dumbfounded. Unexpectedly, as the little girl ran, she suddenly turned around and extended her hand towards a woman next to her. The little girl's movements were extremely fast. An ordinary person's naked eye would not be able to follow her movements. Based on Qin Guang's judgment, this little girl's athletic ability was not inferior to that of a bone force martial artist. The woman screamed and reached out her hands to block. As she screamed, the band of light that extended from the bottom of her leather tights to her collar suddenly released a dazzling light. This seemingly weak and timid woman had inconceivably used her hands to block the little girl's hand. One had to know that this little girl had just killed an adult man effortlessly. Then the woman flew backwards but did not die. The little girl was also stunned. Then she shook her head and said, "Forget it, I'll let you go." This time, she ran towards the golden-haired man without looking back. She even said loudly, "Lord Yuting, I'm coming too." The woman who had blocked the little girl's attack raised her hands in a daze. She looked at her palms and muttered to herself, What ability is this?" In the distance, Qin Guang was even more shocked than her. When the two bands of light on the woman's body lit up, he had actually sensed the power of the Holy Grail from her body. At this moment, Qin Guang felt as if a thief had broken into his backyard. Damn it, why the hell can someone else use the power of the old man's Holy Grail? Did you get the license issued by the master of the Holy Grail? What a scam. On the other side, the calm little girl had already moved further and further away, heading straight for the Lord Yuting she had mentioned. XX died reset. This notification once again rang out in everyone's ears. Everyone who had been approaching each other suddenly stopped in their tracks. The trust that they had built up with so much difficulty was instantly shattered. Everyone returned to their previous state, questioning everyone around them. No one knew when the person who had been smiling just a moment ago would turn into a demon and take their lives. Then he would run towards the tall man called Yuting, shouting that he was a lowly or stupid mortal. "Who are you? What do you want? Are you crazy?" Unexpectedly, the first person to yell hysterically at the calm group was the mixed martial arts instructor who had gathered everyone earlier. He appeared to be extremely angry. His eyes were bloodshot and he looked a little crazy. His emotions were slightly out of control. This mixed martial arts instructor had stepped forward, causing Qin Guang, who had originally planned to take the initiative to attack, to change his mind once again. The person who had been attacked had already been reset. There was no point in acting rashly. More importantly, he had to maintain a high level of vigilance from now on. He couldn't let the same thing happen again. In addition, Qin Guang had also made up his mind. There were still about 40 to 50 normal players present. At this time he had to be more spread out. If someone suddenly attacked, he might not be able to save them in time. However, if anyone dared to attack again, he might have to make the calm group pay with their lives. On the other side, the calm group who had been questioned slowly dispersed. The golden-haired man stepped out from the crowd. He ignored the mixed martial arts instructor's question and looked at the little girl who was returning to her team with a slightly reproachful expression. He scolded, "Wethany, did you not hear my order just now? I said these humans still have some use. Why did you act rashly?" The little girl seemed to be very afraid of the golden-haired man called Yuting. She lowered her head and stood in front of him with her neck shrunk. "I'm sorry, Lord Yuting. I couldn't help but play a prank just now. I won't do it again." Yuting lowered his head and looked at her coldly. "Just this once. Don't do it again. The situation is still not clear. Although these mortals are indeed very lowly creatures in this special world, even trash has value. The killing mission is about to begin. If we let them die now, it's equivalent to weakening our strength in advance. If the entire mission ends up failing, all of our projections will die here. Do you understand? That'll be fun. Remember to stop. All of you come here. Immediately. Immediately. This time, the golden-haired man Yu Ting didn't use his special god's language to speak. Instead, he spoke like a normal person and his voice was especially loud. It seemed like he was speaking to the normal players. Qin Guang raised his eyebrows slightly. After killing 4 people, they're trying to repair their relationship? But he definitely hadn't learned diplomacy. Who would try to get close to someone like that? On one hand, you called them lowly creatures and on the other, you said they were trash. And now you expect them to forgive you? Why don't your nostrils grow towards the sky? You're clearly saying, if I'm not happy, I can slap you to death at any time. Although you're useless now, you might be used as cannon fodder for me later, so I'll let you off for now. Also, why did this bastard called Yu Ting keep mentioning projections? What the hell was a projection? A high-resolution projector? For watching a movie? As expected, everyone, including the MMA coach, couldn't hide their anger even though they were still afraid. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you want? Why do you want to kill people? At this moment, the Asian girl with the hot figure that Qin Guang had been paying attention to finally spoke. She spoke in perfect Mandarin. Yu Ting glanced at the girl, spread his hands and shrugged. Who are we? We're gods. As for why we're here, you don't need to know the answer. You don't need to understand what we want to do. Then what do you need us to do? How do you want to use trash? The girl spoke again. Qin Guang secretly gave her a thumbs up. This girl was very smart. She looked rash, but in fact, she wouldn't let go of any opportunity to gather more information. What do I need you to do? Yu Ting combed his long golden hair. Just do what you need to do. You don't need to worry about the 4 mortals who were reset. Very soon, the low-level vengeful spirits will make you understand that this is just the beginning. Good luck. Alright, I'll tell you a piece of good news. At least before this game ends, we won't actively attack you. You can deal with the vengeful spirits in peace. With that, Yu Ting waved at 2 people in the crowd. As expected, the 2 walked out of the crowd with strange smiles. Lord Yu Ting, we haven't played enough. Shut up. This is the first and last time I'm warning you. This isn't a simple game. It concerns the fate of the endless realm of gods. It concerns the fate of every god. Nothing can go wrong. Put away your arrogance. At least for this first mission, since you've been chosen to be part of the advance party, you must listen to the orders of Divine Emperor Yu Ting. Yu Ting suddenly flew into a rage. He opened his palm at the 2 gods who were walking towards him. In the next moment, under everyone's shocked gazes, 2 bolts of lightning that were as thick as a finger shot out from his palm and landed on the 2 gods. 2 pain screams rang out. The 2 gods trembled violently, then fell to the ground. Bewitching flames surged out of their bodies, then disappeared without a trace. The 2 gods clutched their chests as they lay on the ground for a long time. Only then did they stagger to their feet. They begged for mercy as they crawled towards the other gods. I'll let you off this time, but there won't be a next time. Divine Emperor Yu Ting said quietly, then turned and walked away. The little lowly god from before clapped her hands. As expected of Lord Yu Ting. You can even use the power of lightning here. Amazing. On the other side, the crowd of ordinary players was silent. Everyone was shocked by the power of lightning that he had displayed in that instant. However, these people were not as shocked as Qin Guang. He was finally sure of one thing. These so-called calm people were indeed gods like Lu Li. Wait, did they just mention the word projection? Then maybe what appeared here wasn't their real bodies, but a so-called mirror projection that possessed a portion of their power? Oh, that's right, the god who attacked Lu Chang first mentioned that his divine power was suppressed in the slaughter world. There was one more thing, and this was the most important. This divine Emperor Yu Ting said that this wasn't a simple game to them, but that it concerned the fate of the entire endless realm of gods? According to Lori, the Holy Grail was just a divine artifact in the endless realm of the gods. It was not even comparable to a finger of her father, the master god of chaos. Why would it be inexplicably linked to the fate of the entire endless realm of the gods? How did they break into my Holy Grail? Chapter 1158. The real part of the mission had yet to begin, but Qin Guang felt that he had already suffered enough today. The mental torture and tiredness were much harder to endure than the physical torture. He once again realized that he, the so-called master of the Holy Grail, had never understood the power of the heavenly Holy Grail. Every time he thought that he had the situation under control, the heavenly Holy Grail would give him a hard smack in the head, using the cruel reality of blood to tell him that he knew nothing. In the past, Qin Guang thought that he only needed to be like what Liuli said, to act cool in his daily life and learn some skills from the heavenly Holy Grail at the same time. After he finished learning, he would continue to act cool happily. But later on, he realized that things were not as simple as he had hoped. It hasn't even been a year, but it felt as long as a century. Ever since he was tied to the Sky Holy Grail, Qin Guang never had the chance to experience the ordinary and controllable life of a university student. Everything in life was full of variables and everything became unpredictable. Every time he was about to get on the right track, one unexpected change after another would always fiercely disrupt all his plans. The statue of a god appeared. Faith points appeared along with the statue. He thought that this was a good thing and he had indeed gained many benefits from it. He thought that the truth behind the heavenly Holy Grail's so-called realm in the cup was to make him think of ways to obtain new statues of a god and then collect faith points. Perhaps he could eventually become a god by relying on faith points. After all, it was written in many novels that if a mortal wanted to become a god, he had to obtain a godhood, and the faith of a mortal was the most important condition to condense a godhood. Qin Guang almost thought that he had grasped the core of the matter of becoming a god. But suddenly he realized that he was wrong. Everything was King wrong. The statue of a god suddenly disappeared again, but the faith points continued to be generated. But later on he was saddled with a debt that seemed impossible to repay. He suddenly came to a realization. He had thought that faith points were something mysterious, but it turned out that they were only equivalent to a currency, a consumable. And now he finally saw the hope of paying off the debt. When he thought that everything was back under his control, the fusion of the real world and the real world that he had been worried about led to completely unexpected changes. He told himself again and again that he could control the situation, but the heavenly Holy Grail ruthlessly destroyed his confidence. He often complained to Liuli that he was constantly being forced to do something beyond his capabilities. Later he finally accepted his fate and began to transform from an ordinary young man into a man who cared about the world. He began to get involved in environmental protection. He began to share his knowledge and abilities more generously. He was even willing to selflessly share the photocatalyst market with others instead of selfishly monopolizing it, just so that this kind of technology that could benefit mankind could be popularized faster. Because of a small matter on the plane, he chose to deal with it in the most difficult way. As a person who did not live a luxurious life, he was willing to give up more compensation of more than 100 million US, just to maximize the influence of this matter. As an individual, he challenged the problem that mankind had not been able to overcome for hundreds of years, which countless people had participated in, to eliminate racial discrimination. He always said that he was not a saint, but in the whole world, no one could do what he did except for him. In a very short period of time, he leaped from an ordinary person to the top of the world, becoming someone who had both power and money. But not only did he not indulge in this sudden change in power, but he remained the same. He even took the initiative to take on greater responsibilities. Even when no one knew, he actually thought to himself, even if I really die one day, if I can leave more for this world, it will not be a wasted trip. If one were to divide people into levels of hypocrisy, then Qin Guang would definitely be the player of the highest level. He said things like a loser but did things like a saint. This time his life was about to collapse again. The heavenly Holy Grail once again pulled him into a completely unfamiliar situation. It seemed that nothing had changed. This was still the world in the cup that belonged to him. But uninvited guests had entered this world in the cup, and the appearance of these uninvited guests did not seem to be a coincidence. A real god had appeared in front of him in his world in the cup, and not just one but a whole nest of them. This feeling was like a person who was eating hot pot and singing in his own home, only to suddenly discover that at least 100 people outside had the keys to his house, and could enter and leave at any time. What was going on with this world of slaughter? Why did that Yu Ting say that this matter concerned the life and death of the entire endless god realm? What was the advance party? Yu Ting was the leader? There was a large group behind them? In that case, who gave them the order, and how did they get their so-called projections to descend from the endless god realm? So I became 100,000 wise again. If Lori was a little more reliable, why would I be so confused? Hey big sister, what exactly is going on? This god emperor ran into my world in the cup, and even pointed at my nose and called me a lowly mortal. Looking at his thick eyebrows and big eyes, it was clear that he was a sinister villain who wanted to harm me. What exactly was going on? What exactly was going on? At such a crucial moment, how could your signal be cut off? Don't you want to explain why you dropped the ball for 30 years? Others were dumbfounded by the power of lightning in God Emperor Yu Ting's palm, but Qin Guang, the master of the Holy Grail, who should have been in control of everything, was feeling a pain in the ass because a nest of uninvited guests had barged into his home. He thought to himself, these fellows don't seem to be very strong, and I should be able to withstand Yu Ting's power of lightning. I still have my inner strength and the power of the Earth Exploder, so I'm definitely stronger in terms of raw power. Why don't I make the first move and kill all of them first? Otherwise, if their so-called suppressed divine power recovers, wouldn't I be dead meat? A fierce light flickered in Qin Guang's eyes. He had this devious thought. But in the end he didn't act rashly. In another minute the wraiths would appear. Just as Yu Ting had said, they couldn't afford the consequences of failure. As the master of the Holy Grail and the true recipient of the World in the Cup mission, Qin Guang couldn't fail. Although they were on opposing sides, they seemed to have the same goal. Complete the Massacre World's massacre mission? So, Qin Guang wasn't sure if he could successfully complete the mission if he acted rashly and lost the strength of his allies. The massacre mission was different from the past, and Qin Guang wasn't confident. The low-level wraiths were only the first wave. If there really was a big boss that he couldn't deal with later, he might really have to consider working with them. Just like how Divine Emperor Yu Ting treated the ordinary players with the mentality of recycling trash, Qin Guang had the same thoughts about these Pantheon projections. The more he couldn't understand the situation, the more he wanted to successfully complete the mission. If he failed the mission and died in the mission, it would be too much of a waste. Especially now that Azure's signal had been blocked, Qin Guang couldn't be sure if she could save him like before if he went overboard. On the other side, although Divine Emperor Yu Ting had promised not to attack normal players before the mission was over, the cracks had already appeared. But the cracks had already appeared. How could a few simple words and eye contact be able to mend the gap between them? The people who were about to gather together had unknowingly started to gradually spread out. Although they weren't as densely packed as they had been in the beginning, the distance between each person was still at least 7 to 8 meters. Because of the three so-called gods hiding in the crowd, waiting for an opportunity to slaughter others, the trust between the normal players completely collapsed. Qin Guang couldn't be bothered to consider whether these were real people or NPCs disguised by the Holy Grail. It didn't matter. They were on the same side as him, so there was no doubt about it. Everyone, don't be like this. We have to unite. You have to trust me, right? I'm just an ordinary person like you. Come to me. The boxing coach said again, unwilling to give up. But this time no one responded immediately. Many people looked at him hesitantly, but they still guarded against everyone around them, unwilling to take a step forward. Even if you're not one of those *T gods, how do we know if there's a spy among the others? That's how that person died just now. I don't want to die without knowing why. Those guys are too sinister and cunning. I can't trust anyone now. A balding middle-aged man with red eyes said, clenching his fists tightly. The others nodded. He had said what was on everyone's mind. The boxing coach felt a little helpless. I'm afraid of that too, but there's only 30 seconds left. Those vengeful spirits aren't something you can deal with alone, and this is only the first mission. Who knows if there will be more powerful monsters in the second and third missions. I can't trust anyone anyway. I'd rather rely on myself, the balding man said and walked further away. The balding man said and walked further away. This time he walked to the outermost part of the crowd, as if this was the only way he could feel safe. At this time the woman who had blocked the sneak attack from the lowly god said, "We're not completely without a chance. Everyone pay attention to everyone's clothes. Check them. These clothes can provide us with special abilities." She reminded everyone and they quickly checked them. Following the woman's reminder, another strange card appeared in everyone's mind after the monster card. Novice Combat Suit. A special combat suit to help novice players familiarize themselves with their evolved abilities. It has the most basic combat enhancement effect. The energy reserve is extremely low. Only suitable for novice players. Focus to stimulate potential and activate the combat suit's special effect. Current energy reserve 100%. My energy reserve is only 71%. The woman who had just escaped from death screamed again. Blocking the little lowly sneak attack had almost used up 30% of its energy. This combat suit was really novice. Qin Guang looked at the card in his mind and silently complained. What kind of rubbish novice equipment was this? 30% energy could block the attack of a martial artist in the middle stage of bone strength? I don't even want it. It's not even enough to scratch my itch. Wait. This person doesn't have a combat suit. At this time, a man beside Qin Guang pointed at him and shouted. Qin Guang's heart skipped a beat. Only then did he react. He looked down at the casual clothes on his body, dumbfounded. Damn it, I really don't have one. Holy Grail, are you messing with me? Aren't you trying to separate me from the crowd? How do you expect me to quietly pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger? No wonder Yu Ting noticed me from the beginning. The others weren't blind. The others might have seen him earlier, but compared to the whole situation, his was just an insignificant detail. The others just didn't realize it. Now that everyone realized that the tight-fitting leather clothes on his body were useful, Qin Guang, who didn't have a novice combat suit, was obviously very special. In a sense, among all of them he was more unique than the gods. As this matter was exposed, a huge vacuum appeared around Qin Guang in an instant. Everyone had run away. Who are you? The MMA coach scrutinized him from afar. Why aren't you wearing a combat suit? Another young man who was closer to Qin Guang clenched his fists and glared at Qin Guang, looking like he was about to attack him. Feeling the hostility coming from all directions, Qin Guang's mouth twitched. At a time like this, any explanation he gave would be useless, wouldn't it? He decided to act cool. If I say that I'm not a newbie but an old player, and that's why I don't have a novice combat suit, would you believe me? Believe my ass. Get away from me. The man who pointed out that he didn't have a combat suit glared at him. That's right. Go away. God knows if you're in cahoots with those people. The young man pointed in the direction of the god's projection again. Feeling helpless, Qin Guang replied, Forget it. You're just a bunch of noobs. Good luck to you. After complaining, he turned around and walked away. He had wanted to be the protector of these normal players, but he didn't expect to be rejected first. Since you guys didn't appreciate my kindness, don't blame me. The vengeful spirits were about to arrive, so he didn't have the mood to care about others. At that moment, Qin Guang felt a sharp gaze from further away. Qin Guang raised his head and looked in that direction. The emperor god called Yu Ting was looking at him with a meaningful expression. Qin Guang didn't mind. He turned around and looked at him provocatively. Unexpectedly, it was Yu Ting who looked away first. Qin Guang labeled him as a coward. Since then, the 90 people who entered the slaughter world were officially divided into 3 camps. The god's projection, led by Yu Ting, was undoubtedly the strongest. There were more than 40 of them. The second camp was led by the MMA coach, but the normal players were fighting on their own. After 4 of their companions died at the beginning, their numbers were about the same as the god's projection. Now they were using the last bit of time to check their novice combat suits. Just like the woman just now, they were able to use abilities that surpassed their physical bodies at the critical moment. This became their last hope. Qin Guang unfortunately became the 3rd camp as a commander without an army. But without a doubt, no one knew that he was currently the strongest existence in the slaughter world. The vengeful spirits are about to descend. Counting down. 10, 9, 8. Suddenly the electronic voice rang in everyone's ears again. Apart from Qin Guang, everyone instantly focused and became extremely nervous. The scene looked a little funny. Dozens of people bowed slightly and got into a half-squatting position. They clenched their fists tightly and carefully looked around. Their heads all turned like a pendulum clock with a motor running. The atmosphere on the god's projection side seemed more relaxed. They were still talking and laughing, but the sharp Qin Guang still noticed some changes. Their calmness was mostly a facade. In fact, there was still a hint of nervousness in their eyes. This was good news. It meant that although they were gods, they did not know much about the heavenly Holy Grail and the slaughter mission. Perhaps in the endless god realm, they had unimaginable power and could even destroy a plane or a universe. But in the cup world of the heavenly Holy Grail they were also newbies. They were not afraid of the vengeful spirits, but the heavenly Holy Grail and the slaughter mission. How many vengeful spirits would there be? Also, did these things have intelligence? Were they like beasts? Perhaps Qin Guang was the calmest person in the field, even calmer than the god's projection. Then he stood in the corner and suddenly widened his eyes. *CK. There were so many of them. As the countdown reached the end, clouds of black fog appeared without warning in every corner of the 1-kilometer diameter Colosseum. Even the audience's repetitive cheers became louder and noisier. When each cloud of black fog was first born, it was only the size of a fingernail. But it grew with the wind, trembling and expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, it turned into a vengeful spirit that was as tall as a human. These vengeful spirits looked exactly like monster cards. They had huge claws that were completely disproportionate to their bodies. The claws of these things were almost as tall as they were, almost reaching the ground. Their bodies looked a bit like sticky cotton candy, but the sharp claws on the ends of their 2 long arms were like 5 sharp pitch-black spikes, shining with a metallic luster. But the most important thing was, there were too many of them. As Qin Guang looked around, there were so many that he could not even count them. What he saw was that the entire Colosseum had turned into a pitch-black ocean. The normal players who were scattered were in an even more difficult situation. They were only about 10 meters away from each other, but even though it was a short distance of 10 meters, there were almost 4 to 5 beginner vengeful spirits between them. Damn, the first mission has to be so big? Qin Guang could not help but grumble. Other than the god's projection, everyone was like an island in a black ocean. A bone-chilling cold surged in everyone's heart. The normal players were left with despair. Chapter 1159. Screams could be heard from all directions. This time it wasn't just the female players who were devastated, but the male players as well. Under the mental pressure of the countless wraiths, men and women were no different from each other. More than 10 ordinary players clutched their heads like rats in a panic, their mouths letting out hysterical screams. Their minds were blank. The newbie combat uniform had taken them a long time to regain their composure and confidence, but now they were completely destroyed by the sea of wraiths. How can we survive? These things are so scary. They look so scary and there are so many of them. How are we going to survive here? We're dead. We're dead. He was dead for sure. After a short moment of silence, the gods' projections made a noise. They had taken the initiative to attack. Unlike the normal players who were at a loss of what to do, the gods' projections were even sizing up the cuties in their eyes with great interest. How long has it been since we've seen such weak monsters? The little girl standing next to Yu Ting teased him. Yu Ting didn't say anything. He kept his eyes on Qin Guang, who was further away. He had been paying attention to Qin Guang. A man in front of the little girl laughed. Lady Vasani, these aren't monsters. According to the game, they should be phantasmagoric beasts. This isn't a game. It's a mission, Yu Ting said slowly. Vasani looked at Yu Ting with a confused expression. Lord Yu Ting, we received a notification before we came in. It clearly told us that this was just a game. Yu Ting shook his head. When this matter appeared in front of me, the Emperor of God, it was beyond the scope of a game. Even I don't have the right to reject it. Vasani, can you still see this as a game? You can't understand the will of the Emperor of God, and you don't know that the seemingly peaceful endless celestial realm is in grave danger. Do you think I was just joking? This matter concerns the survival of the celestial realm. What about the bald man in the distance? She turned to look in Qin Guang's direction. Even though her line of sight was blocked by countless wraiths, she knew Qin Guang was there. That's our greatest enemy. He's our ultimate enemy in this mission called a game, but it's actually a mission. Once again Yu Ting blocked the god's projection from the outside world. He did not want Qin Guang to hear this. She knew that the Yuding God King would never joke around, but she still exclaimed, "How is that possible? He looks like a slightly stronger mortal. But he has an aura that even I fear. Then why don't we just kill him now?" Yu Ting shook his head. "I can't." Waseni said, "What? We can't do it?" Yu Ting nodded again. "Yes, I can't. We are no match for him now. Impossible. He was just a mortal. Lord Yuding, you are the divine emperor. No, you don't even need to do anything. I'll deal with him myself." Yu Ting looked down at her. "You're doubting my judgment again. When will you change this habit of yours?" She shrunk her neck and hurriedly smiled. All right, I understand." Seeing that she had calmed down, Yu Ting clasped his hands behind his back and said, "We are only the advance party. Our goal here is to gather more information about this place. Of course, we also need to ensure the success of this mission. Losing a projection doesn't matter to me, but to you it's very serious. We will kill him sooner or later, but not today. It's a pity?" "What's a pity?" "It's a pity that he won't look like this next time. Next time he'll probably be more careful. He won't expose himself so easily." She nodded. "That's true. If you hadn't revealed your aura from the start, I wouldn't have recognized you. I'll be more careful next time. All right, everyone, let's kill these wraiths." She asked again, "Then do we need to save those lowly mortals?" "No, the weak aren't even worth using as trash." With Vesni's command, the gods' projections struck first before the vengeful spirits could make their move. The gods' projections of different heights did not make any sound, but they pounced at the low-level vengeful spirits beside them at an extremely fast speed. Yu Ting was the only one who could use his divine power, But the other gods could do the same thing they did when they were slaughtering the normal players. They attached their divine power to their bodies and unleashed shocking destructive power. In an instant, all sorts of heavy punches, knife-hand strikes, and flying kicks landed on the still-frozen wraiths. Thud 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 sounds could be heard. These frightening wraiths seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow from the gods' projections. One by one they were scattered and finally turned into thick smoke that slowly disappeared. Seeing this, the normal players in the distance were encouraged. Don't just stand there. Let's attack before these monsters react. Kill as many as you can. The MMA instructor shouted. He took the lead and rushed toward the wraiths closest to him. He got into a stance and threw a heavy punch. In order to achieve success in one hit, he even used the energy in his combat uniform. As two bands of light lit up on his body, his punch landed on the chest of the wraiths in front of him like lightning. Just like the gods' projections, the wraiths in front of the MMA instructor exploded with a loud bang. He was instantly overjoyed. He turned around and grinned at the people behind him. Did you see that? These things can't take a beating. We have a chance. I only used 10% of the combat uniform's energy to destroy this monster. The others were encouraged by him. They all boosted their morale and imitated him to attack the wraiths around them. However, at that moment the MMA instructor's body shook violently and he flew backward. While he was still in the air, the light on his combat uniform quickly dimmed. A vengeful spirit was standing behind his original position, slowly retracting its sharp claws. With a plop, the MMA instructor flew 7 or 8 meters in the air and landed next to an ordinary player. He coughed heavily and struggled to stand up. He spat out a mouthful of blood and said with a pale face, still in shock, My God. This monster took 40% of my combat uniform's energy with one claw. Everyone be careful. Although these things can't take a beating, their attack power is terrifying. The player next to him was the pale-faced middle school student that Qin Guang had noticed before. This person nimbly dodged the claws of a wraiths in front of him. He raised his leg and kicked the wraiths in the chest, causing it to explode. He said calmly, Isn't it written clearly in the monster card? Agility-type Phantom Beast. Aren't all agility-type monsters like this in all online games? High attack, low defense, and low health. You were careless. The MMA instructor's face turned red. I was careless. Friend, why don't we work together? I refuse. You'll only drag me down. The middle school student raised his hand and killed another wraiths. He ignored the MMA instructor and walked to the side. The MMA instructor was extremely helpless. He shouted, With so many wraiths, it's impossible for one person to come out unscathed. We have to work together. I know, but I don't like being led by the nose, understand? The young man walked further and further away, no longer paying attention to him. On the other side, the others weren't so lucky. Even someone as strong as the MMA instructor was caught off guard. The others, who had long since panicked in this kind of situation, didn't have the strength to fight back. Only those who could respond calmly had a chance at survival. Those who were still confused and didn't know what was going on would only be quickly eliminated. From the time the wraiths began to move, perhaps only 30 seconds had passed. Among the ordinary players there were official casualties. Accompanied by a shrill scream, the light band of a brown-haired woman's combat uniform was completely extinguished. Immediately, a sharp claw pierced through the back of her cracked combat uniform and into her back. The woman roared in despair. She turned around and slammed her head into the wraiths. I'll kill you. However, her struggle was futile. The wraiths only shook slightly after being slammed by her head. Then they slashed down with their sharp claws. The woman's body was completely torn apart. Christy is dead. Reset. The emotionless electronic voice of the heavenly Holy Grail rang in everyone's ears again. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. The sexy Chinese woman frowned slightly. At the same time she used up 8% of the combat uniform's energy to activate her right hand. She ruthlessly slashed the wraith's neck with her hand. This 8% energy consumption was a technique she had figured out after killing 4 wraiths in a row. Although her body wasn't as strong as the MMA instructors with the same 10% energy boost, the strength of her attack was definitely not as good as the instructors. However, the Chinese woman had keenly chosen to attack the wraith's vital points from the beginning. The first time she tried to sweep the wraith's head with her feet. After using up 5% of her energy she successfully killed it. The second time she tried to drive the wraith's lower body away. After using up 1% of her energy she successfully killed it. The third time she chose the wraith's neck. After using up 4% of her energy, she successfully killed it. This time, based on her experience and intuition, she directly reduced the energy consumption to 8%. She still succeeded. However, the overall energy consumption was more than that. Although the wraith's movements were relatively clumsy and even slower than ordinary people, they still had an overwhelming advantage in terms of numbers. Facing the wraith's ferocious attacks, she would be stretched thin. When she killed the third wraiths earlier, there was a moment when it was almost impossible for her to dodge. However, at this critical moment, she decisively used up 0.9% of her energy to strengthen her legs. She kicked hard and accurately dodged the wraith's killer move. The Chinese woman was growing at an unbelievable speed under such circumstances. However, she was still in despair. The energy in the newbie combat uniform was decreasing, but the wraiths in front of her were still as vast as an ocean. The moment the energy was depleted would probably be the moment she would be reset, right? Adalai Pai died. Reset. This time it was a man who died. Luoangwa died. Reset. Triple X died. Reset. Like dominoes, after the first woman died tragically at the hands of the wraiths, ordinary players fell one after another. In less than a minute, 10 notifications rang out consecutively. Chapter 1160. As for the rest of the normal players, they finally gathered together in groups of 2s and 3s, perhaps because of their subconscious. Among them, the MMA instructor had the most people around him. There were 8 of them. Although the MMA instructor had exhausted his energy, he was slowly figuring out the ropes. He relied purely on his physical strength and techniques to dodge agilely, occasionally throwing punches without any energy support. He also learned to attack the wraith's necks. After repeated attempts, he found that he only needed to hit the same spot 3 times in a row to kill a wraith. However, he was still in a precarious situation. If he was attacked, he would die for sure. Fortunately, the others finally chose to trust him and were willing to cooperate under his guidance. The 8 of them supported each other with their backs to each other. Under the onslaught of the wraiths, they were like an island in the middle of a vast ocean. Fortunately, the wraiths did not leave behind corpses after they died. They disappeared on the spot. Otherwise, the corpses in front of them would have surrounded them. The calm middle school student had fewer people around him. There were only 5 or 6 of them. As the energy in his combat uniform began to decrease, he finally let go of his pride and began to accept the others. The others saw that he was strong, so they moved closer to him. He found another way. For example, he had one of them use 3% of their energy to rush forward and grab a wraith. Then he would have another person rush forward and grab the wraith's neck with his hand. That way he would only need to use 4% of his energy to tear the wraith's throat apart. As for the old man who looked very imposing, he was surrounded by 4 or 5 people of different skin colors. They quickly moved to the edge of the arena. They only needed to lean against the wall to face the enemies in one direction. The old man's face was calm as he commanded, "Don't panic. There's always a way out. There must be a way. Let's stabilize the formation first. Those whose energy can't keep up, retreat a little. Use these clumsy monsters to block each other." The others followed his instructions and learned the technique of leveraging force that he taught them. This way they could use less power to deal damage to the vengeful spirits. Not everyone was a genius. The wraiths looked fierce, but the so-called agility-type monsters seemed to have gone wrong. They were not fast. After calming down, everyone had enough time to react. This vengeful spirit should be a strength-type phantom beast. Of course, it was also possible that the so-called agility of the vengeful spirit was a snail. They were indeed agile. In any case, no one was in the mood to complain. In truth, the explanation for the vengeful spirit monster card was not very rigorous. It was like a retarded explanation written by a newbie game designer who had just graduated from a gaming company. There was no one around the hot Wuxia woman. It wasn't that she wasn't willing to help others, but she was completely immersed in her calculations and forgot to ask the people around her to come closer. Also, this woman was probably unlucky. From the very beginning, apart from a 12 or 13-year-old child, there were 7 or 8 weak-looking women by her side. These girls had big hearts that did not match their bodies. They had held on until now, but they could only barely protect themselves. They dodged randomly and fought back from time to time. They really did not have the strength to get close to the same direction. After killing another vengeful spirit, the Chinese woman forced herself to calm down. She checked the energy in her battle uniform again and sighed. She had already killed 9 vengeful spirits, but what was the point? There was only 9. 3% of the battle uniform left. It was only enough to kill one more. Looking at the endless black ocean in the distance, her heart was desolate. Even I can't survive? I should have cooperated with someone earlier. So, at that moment, she suddenly noticed that a child not far in front of her was in a bad situation. The child was obviously exhausted. He fell to the ground and crawled around randomly. Behind him, there was an exceptionally tall vengeful spirit that chased after him with the speed of a human jogging. It raised its left claw high and slashed down fiercely. The woman didn't have time to think. She shouted and used up 1.5% of her energy. She rushed in the direction of the child. Forget it. I'm going to die anyway. Maybe I can't save this child, but it's more meaningful to die like this, right? With that thought in her heart, she gritted her teeth and rushed forward. She burned up the last 7.8% of her energy and used her hand like a sword to stab the vengeful spirit's neck in front of her. With a squelch, the vengeful spirit's sharp claw stopped about 3 centimeters away from the back of the child's head. Then it scattered. Thank you. Thank you, sister. The child cried bitterly as he struggled to get up. The Chinese woman lowered her head and looked at him. She smiled gently. It's okay. Don't worry. There will be a way. But my battle uniform is out of energy. It's all gone. We're dead. This child had to be said to be quite strong and behaved much better than many adults. The Chinese woman stood up. It's okay. Look at these vengeful spirits. They aren't moving fast. Even without the battle uniform, we still have a chance. She comforted the child, but she had already lost all hope. As the woman spoke, the child looked behind her in shock. Sister. 3. The woman turned around and saw 3 vengeful spirits charging toward her. Her body trembled. It's over. It's all over. If it was only one, she could deal with it with the self-defense skills she learned and the martial arts she learned from watching her boss's videos. But facing 3 at once, what should I do? Run. Maybe I can escape. The woman turned around abruptly, only to see the child in front of her, who had been scared silly. Forget it. I can run faster than the monk but not the temple. I'll die sooner or later. I'll fight it out with you. The woman turned around and pursed her lips. Then she pounced toward the 3 vengeful spirits. Halfway there, she tried to close her eyes a few times, but she kept them open. Boom. A loud sound rang out. A black shadow flashed in front of the woman. She thought she was seeing things. The 3 vengeful spirits that were running suddenly stopped. The woman looked over and realized that the waists of the 3 ferocious-looking vengeful spirits had become empty. Then there was a series of explosions. The 3 vengeful spirits turned into dust and disappeared. You. The woman looked at the back of the bald man who wasn't wearing his battle uniform. Then she looked behind him in a daze. Looking from here, in the middle of the black ocean, there was a 200-meter-long passageway coming from afar. Black fog that had yet to completely disperse floated above these tunnels. Only the heavens knew how many vengeful spirits had died along the way. He had created a temporary vacuum in the sea of vengeful spirits. Who the hell is this guy? Why is his style completely different from ours? Qin Guang turned around and looked at the woman. He shrugged. I told you that I'm a veteran player. Moreover, I'm a veteran player. Why didn't you believe me? Qin Guang felt that he was too soft-hearted. When he was being ostracized, he planned to stand by and watch. He didn't know what was wrong with these vengeful spirits. They said that they hated all living creatures, but none of them approached him. He didn't know if they ignored him or if his presence was too weak. From the beginning, they rushed toward the center of the normal players. Of course, they might be afraid of him. After all, he was too strong. At least in the first mission, these vengeful spirits couldn't do any real damage to him. They just made other players feel despair because of their numbers. Qin Guang was happy to be at ease. Although he didn't feel good when he heard the notification of him being reset. However, he still felt that these players might be a trap prepared by the heavenly Holy Grail for him. They were NPCs pretending to be real people. They wanted to shake his mind and make him take action, so he was unwilling. After all, once he decided to stand on the same side as them, he would eventually become their partner, regardless of whether they were real or fake. If the mission suddenly asked him to kill everyone at the end, what would he do? He was too soft-hearted. Wouldn't he be asking for trouble and torture? Therefore, he simply made himself colder. He resisted the urge to take action and only observed in the dark. The MMA coach seemed honest, but he was actually saving his strength when he was commanding others. Although the middle school student was also helping others, he was actually selfish and indifferent in his bones. As for the old man, he wasn't that selfish. However, the situation around him wasn't dangerous, so he could still hold on for a while. The young man who had doubted Qin Guang died a long time ago. He was also unlucky. There shouldn't have been so many vengeful spirits around him, but he was too close to Qin Guang. The vengeful spirits avoided Qin Guang and rushed to his side. Qin Guang only watched coldly from the side. I only wish you that you didn't die after being reset and forget this unpleasant memory. Or, I wish you that you're an NPC so it doesn't matter if you die. Of course, what kept him from acting rashly was the gaze that kept shooting in his direction from afar. He always felt that Yu Ting was up to no good. However, Qin Guang's golden body was still broken by this Chinese woman's action of saving the child. When he saw this, he silently thought to himself, forget it, I admit defeat. Even if this is really a show prepared by the heavenly Holy Grail for me, even if this is an NPC pretending to be a real person, I still have feelings for an NPC like this. I'm F*King immersed in the role. When it comes to acting, I'm a professional. After making up his mind, Qin Guang took a deep breath and activated his inner strength. Then he rushed over like a cannonball. These vengeful spirits, which looked like scourges and fierce beasts in the eyes of others, were actually slightly stronger and more resistant to grass than ordinary people. They were weaker than martial artists with muscle strength, and their movements were so slow that it made one's hair stand on end. As for their blade-like claws, when they landed on Qin Guang, who was a martial sage, it was no different from scratching an itch. Just as the middle school student had said, Qin Guang didn't even need to stretch out his hand. He just needed to use his shoulder to ram over and the vengeful spirits would scatter upon contact. That was why the tunnel was like a miracle. The Chinese woman stared blankly at Qin Guang before tears fell. Thank you. Thank you. Qin Guang turned around and helped her up. It's okay. It's not bad to have a smuff. He said this on purpose so that the woman wouldn't ask him why he didn't save the child earlier. He wanted to give her the illusion that this was really a game. Otherwise, Qin Guang really wouldn't be able to reply to her. All of a sudden, Qin Guang and the Chinese woman were both stunned. Different notifications rang out in their hearts at the same time. Vengeful Spirit Kills. 76. Obtained 7 reward points. For every 10 vengeful spirits killed, you will receive 1 reward point. Accumulating the remaining 4 kills. Vengeful Spirit Kills. 10. Obtained 1 reward point. For every 10 vengeful spirits killed, you will receive 1 reward point. Chapter 1161. Reward points? What's the use of that? The Chinese woman read the notification in her mind and looked up at Qin Guang. She seemed to believe that Qin Guang was an experienced money player. With his hands behind his back, Qin Guang wore an unfathomable expression. He paid no attention to Su Tao and looked in another direction. Why are you asking me about such a simple matter? Weren't you a genius when no one was helping you? Although I have a smuff, I'm not a nanny. Think about it yourself. With that, he turned around and left. This time he didn't go far. Since he was already here, he might as well finish what he had to do. Speaking of which, it was strange. Previously, these vengeful spirits had deliberately avoided him, but after he killed 76 vengeful spirits at once, the remaining vengeful spirits no longer felt any fear towards him. They began to approach him and attack him. However, Qin Guang wasn't careless as he sprinted and swiftly raised his hand, one after another. He first cleared the area around the Chinese woman and the child, then killed more than 30 wraiths to clear an empty space in the middle of the ocean. Then he began to run in a straight line toward the others. The wraiths exploded the moment they came into contact with him. They couldn't even stop him. What Qin Guang wanted to do was, of course, to save the others who were scattered not far from the Chinese woman. The Chinese woman stared blankly at this extremely powerful old player. She didn't know what she was feeling. She admired him, but she also felt that he was mysterious. Then she thought of the 10 notifications saying, XX died, reset. She couldn't help but feel a little resentful. Since you have such incredible power, why didn't you stand up from the beginning? But the woman immediately figured out the crux of the matter. No, at first he seemed to be approaching the crowd. At that time he must have wanted to help everyone. Later, when the others realized that he didn't have the novice combat uniform, they resisted him. In the end he turned around and walked away. I noticed it too, but I didn't stand up for him. No one spoke up for him. Everyone was suspicious of each other because of those hypocritical gods, so it was even more impossible for them to accept him. If everyone had stuck together from the start, it would have been almost impossible to have any casualties against these vengeful spirits, right? We only have ourselves to blame. The Wuxia woman's mind worked very quickly. So many thoughts flashed through her mind in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. On the other side, Qin Guang came back with another person. It was a woman who was on the verge of death. Then he turned around and left. Before he left, he once again cleared the area of vengeful spirits. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but in fact it only took about 10 seconds. Apart from that, the Chinese woman had also figured out how to use the reward points in those 10 seconds. Sir, about the reward points? The Chinese woman looked at Qin Guang's back and asked loudly again. Qin Guang didn't even turn his head, looking very impatient. I already said, don't ask me about such a simple matter. The Chinese woman immediately said, no, I already know how to use it. Qin Guang's footsteps came to a halt. He almost wanted to turn around and ask her. Damn it. I don't know how to use it either. I'm not an experienced player. I'm a newbie just like you guys. It's just that I topped up my newbie account before I created it, so it's much more powerful than ordinary newbie accounts. Wait, she said she knows how to use it? As this thought popped up in Qin Guang's mind, a control panel of a single-player game suddenly appeared in his mind. New story. Old memories. Qin Guang's mouth twitched. If I remember correctly, this should be the initial interface of the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1. This unlucky heavenly holy grail seems to be slacking off. Just as he was thinking about this, the scene suddenly blurred and changed into another pattern. Looking at the new image, he nodded silently. Okay, this game developer is really awesome. The players just complained in their minds and they changed the game. I really have to thank you for being so humane. Also, why is the background of this game panel the Cloud City in the Old Man's Cup realm? Are you just taking a photo from high up in the sky to deal with it? Can you be even more lazy? This time the developer didn't care about his complaints. Instead, 3 buttons quickly appeared on the screen. Illustration. Click here to see the 2 cards that you saw before, the monster card for beginner vengeful spirit and the explanation card for newbie combat uniform. Mission. Click here to see the mission description, and it currently showed this line. Main mission. Complete the killing mission and survive. Mission in progress. Qin Guang silently gave a thumbs up. The developer of the Heavenly Holy Grail had upgraded its script, and the word, survive, was used very well. The third button was simple. As the name suggested, it was Reward Point Mall. It was quite simple and straightforward, and the items that appeared after clicking it were also very simple. Combat Uniform Repair, Combat Uniform Charging, Gold Sword Medicine, Red Bull, and Ability Strengthening. Among them, the 5th item, Ability Strengthening, was currently grayed out and it was useless to click it. But the first 4 items could be clicked. Qin Guang didn't have a combat uniform at all. With a shake of his hand, he clicked on the Gold Sword Medicine and deducted 1 reward point. Then, with a flash of light, a porcelain bottle of Gold Sword Medicine that was exactly the same as the one on TV appeared in his left hand. Qin Guang put the people he had picked up next to the 3 Chinese women, and then threw the Gold Sword Medicine to the woman who was in the best condition. This is for healing. Take it and give it to the others. After throwing the things, Qin Guang cleaned up the scene while playing with this rather crudely made game interface. Then he bought a Red Bull. Putting the can in his pocket, Qin Guang killed a vengeful spirit while looking at the interface of the illustration for Gold Sword Medicine and Red Bull. Well, it was just as he thought. Gold Sword Medicine, made from 16 kinds of precious Chinese herbs, including Panax Noto Ginseng, according to an ancient recipe. Every drop is fragrant. Beginner Injury Medicine. Treats simple physical injuries from internal and external injuries to bruises. It is extremely effective. Red Bull, thirsty? Drink Red Bull. Tired? Drink Red Bull. A super useful energy drink that recovers stamina and brings back all pulsation. After reading these 2 explanation cards, Qin Guang almost fell to the floor. If any unlucky game company really wrote the script like this, they would probably hang the developers up and beat them up. I'm too lazy to complain about the rest. The first one is called Gold Sword Medicine, which seems very old-fashioned, but the second one is AF*King Red Bull. What kind of a hybrid is this? Also, how lazy is this copywriter of yours? You even copied someone else's advertising slogan. Aren't you afraid of being sued for copyright infringement? Also, Red Bull is Red Bull. Why the F***ck do you need pulsation back? As he complained, he saved another person. At this time, the Chinese woman had already fed the Gold Sword Medicine to the girl who was the most seriously injured. Also, looking at the brightness of the light band on her combat uniform, she must have spent one of her reward points. Choosing to recharge the combat uniform was a wise choice. Other than that, on the way back, Qin Guang also heard her shouting at the people in the distance. Everyone hold on. Our combat uniforms can be recharged. As long as we kill 10 vengeful spirits, we can get 1 reward point. We only need one reward point to restore the energy reserve of our combat uniforms to 100%. The girl's voice was quite loud. In order to let her voice travel further in the extremely noisy environment, she seemed to have used the combat uniform's energy quite extravagantly. But the effect was also very good. The others who were on the verge of collapse suddenly became spirited and grasped at the important life-saving straw. At this time, people in other directions had also achieved 10 kills. Everyone chose to recharge the combat uniforms. The others were not as extravagant as Chen Guang. If they had some minor injuries, they would drag it out for a while. It was more important for them to recover their energy and have the ability to protect themselves. During this short pause, Chen Guang simply spent all the 10 reward points he had accumulated. He first exchanged 10 bottles of gold sore medicine and threw them to the Chinese woman. In the next minute, Chen Guang finally fished up 7 or 8 people in the vicinity. Most of them were in a miserable state. The one with the best performance had only achieved 9 kills alone, which was 1 kill away from 10. 3 of them even had serious damage to their combat uniforms. However, the effects of the gold sore medicine were well deserved. After they were fed it, their injuries healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Of course, there was nothing perfect in this world. During this time, the ordinary players who were still scattered everywhere died again. Another 3 people did not manage to achieve 10 kills and were tragically reset. After a short period of panic, the ordinary players were reduced from more than 40 to 33 people. They were divided into 5 groups. On Chen Guang's side there was a child and 8 girls. Including himself, there were 10 people in total. There was also a total of 8 people united with the MMA coach as the core. The genius high school student was surrounded by a total of 6 people. As for the old man, there were also 6 people in total. There were also 3 strong men united together. These 3 people were also unlucky. From the beginning, they had been standing far away from the others. Fortunately, they seemed to have some foundation. With their backs against the competition area's wall, they barely held on. Even Chen Guang did not expect such a tragic loss to be reduced by a quarter in just one mission. But who was to blame? Just as the Chinese woman had said, if everyone had been united from the beginning and protected by him, things would not have turned out this way. However, they could not be blamed for this. If it was anyone else, after being ruthlessly tricked by the god's projection, they would not have easily trusted others. When they were ostracizing Chen Guang, they did not think about Chen Guang's safety. After all, on the surface, these ordinary players with the newbie combat uniform should be more secure than Chen Guang, who was a pay-to-play player with white equipment. There was always a price to pay for being selfish. It was all fate. This unlucky guy's golden sore medicine is in liquid form. After settling down, Chen Guang felt more relaxed. He walked around in circles with the Chinese woman and the others. From time to time he would raise his hand and casually slap away 2 wraiths. In his other hand, he held an empty bottle with a stiff expression. Just now, he had made another bottle of golden sore medicine. He had intended to turn his hand over to see if it was the same pill as the one on TV. He did not expect to spill the liquid on the ground. The Chinese woman watched with a pained heart. "Don't waste it." Chen Guang stopped in his tracks and turned to look at the countless wraiths. "Isn't there still a lot of them? What's there to waste?" "Sir, these friends' combat uniforms are damaged. What should we do now? They still need a few more kills to get a reward point." The Chinese woman knew that she had no right to lecture him. She changed the topic. "Can you help them?" She did not want to admit that she had developed a dependence on this man in such a short time. Although she did not know his identity, the Chinese woman felt a sense of familiarity from him. Chapter 1162. "That's easy. I have an idea." Chen Guang rolled his eyes. This time he did not kill the wraiths around him. Instead, he held them in his hands and walked toward the crowd. He casually tossed the wraiths that he had crushed to death onto the ground. "Finish them off yourselves. Each of you should gather 10 wraiths. This slaughtering world should count the number of kills based on the person who delivered the last blow." As he was thinking about this, a girl beside him mustered up her courage and came forward. She stomped on the neck of the wraiths that were defenseless on the ground. "How many more do you need?" Chen Guang asked. The girl looked at her foot in confusion. "That's strange. This should be the last one. But why didn't I get any reward points?" "Then try killing another one." With a flash of his body, Chen Guang cleared the area a few seconds later. Then he tossed the next one in front of the girl. The girl did the same thing. Her face immediately revealed an expression of ecstasy. "I got it." As she spoke, she exclaimed, "Huh? Why is there an extra 0? 4 kill points? Qin Guang suddenly understood. I understand now. If I had beaten the beast to the point where it could not resist at all, the person who delivered the last blow would at most get a 70% kill reward. He did the same for the others, and a few minutes later they all had their combat suits repaired. Apart from that, after the child and the Wuxia woman recovered their energy, they had unknowingly killed another 10 vengeful spirits. Qin Guang realized a problem. None of these normal players were easy to deal with. Alright, most of the easy ones had been eliminated from the beginning. After the initial chaos, those who were able to survive had quickly adapted to the current special situation. This was especially true for the other 4 groups of people. Even without his help, they still managed to stabilize their footing. They generally adopted a similar strategy, retreating to the edge of the arena one after another. This way they only needed to deal with enemies from one direction and it was much easier. Such a strange scene appeared in the circular arena. The Pantheon's projection was a one-sided massacre. Up until now, they had not even used the energy in the newbie combat uniform. For the Pantheon gods, if it were not for the fact that they did not want to be naked, they would have thrown away the tattered clothes a long time ago. The support provided by the novice combat uniform was practically negligible. Not only did they not shrink their formation, after a short period of probing, they went on a killing spree under Yu Ting's orders, continuously expanding the area they covered. Everyone hurry up. These reward points don't seem to be of much use right now, but they might have some special use after accumulating enough. Don't leave too many for those mortals. Although they are trash, they are still our competitors. I will not allow anything unexpected to happen. That guy had already begun to take the initiative to nurture mortals. I thought he would be selfish until the end of the mission. No wonder he's our biggest enemy. When Divine Emperor Yu Ting transmitted his voice to the other gods' projections, he deliberately shielded his words from the senses of Qin Guang. On the other side, there were 4 small groups with their backs against the wall, constantly taking turns to kill the wraiths in front of them. Although they were a little late, these 4 small groups had learned to use their energy more precisely like the Wuxia women. Moreover, since there were many strong men among them, they had gained extra reward points earlier. Even the MMA instructor, who had suffered heavy losses due to his carelessness, managed to kill 10 wraiths with his own strength after exhausting his energy. After recovering the combat uniform's energy, he was like a fish in water. On average, he only needed to use 5% of his energy to complete the kill. The most special ones were the people around Qin Guang. Apart from the child, they were all girls, but they did not have their backs against the wall. Under Qin Guang's protection, the girls were not that afraid. After all, he would clear the area regularly and only let in a small number of wraiths. They treated it as practice. However, there was no substantial change in the situation. There were not many reward points left for the 8 girls and the child. Although the Wuxia woman was a genius, she had only learned some simple self-defense skills in the past. She did not deliberately train her body. No matter how meticulous she was with her calculations, she could barely make ends meet. After killing 10 wraiths, she had no reward points left. The other girls with her, apart from 2 who were obviously trained, performed even worse. Every time they exhausted their energy, they could only kill 7 or 8 wraiths, and Qin Guang had to give them the last hit. In a desperate situation, a person's body might be able to temporarily explode, but if it was for a long time, no matter how strong one's will was, it would be defeated by a weak body. It had to be said that they were lucky to be in Qin Guang's range of rescue in such a desperate moment. The unlucky ones who had offended Qin Guang from the start had long since been reduced to ashes and reset. The so-called survival of the fittest, killing and being killed, was often the quickest, most convenient, and most merciless method of elimination. It was just like how the genes of countless animals and plants evolved over the long course of history. It was just that the world of slaughter had infinitely accelerated this process. When the situation was stabilized and the gamers familiarized themselves with the process of fighting the wraiths, they could finally relax and started chatting. What's your name? Qin Guang crossed his arms and stood beside the voluptuous Wuxia woman. He didn't take the initiative to attack. Instead, he observed the other gamers. The Wuxia woman had taught Qin Guang more precisely how to distribute power. Qin Guang had no intention of being a babysitter forever. The Wuxia woman thought for a while and said, I'm peasant. Jua? No, it's the peasant from sweat dripping in the soil. Qin Guang said, Oh, who's Noon? Why did you give me such a strange name? You're still in the mood to joke at a time like this. Qin Guang twitched his mouth and said, I said I'm a big R. These novice monsters look powerful to you. I didn't use my area of effect skills. Otherwise I would have wiped them out. There's mana? A large area of effect mana? Peasant was shocked. Qin Guang realized that he had exaggerated. He couldn't activate the ability enhancement in the reward point system shop, so he didn't know if there was such a setting. You'll find out soon. Alright, what's your name? Peasant raised his hand and stabbed another wraith to death before turning his head and asking. Qin Guang said without hesitation, Peasant is a pseudonym, but I'm too lazy to ask for your real name. I'll use a pseudonym too. You can call me Noon. How annoying. Is that so? Then I'm leaving. Don't. I'm joking. Let Noon be Noon. Hello, Mr. Noon. Nodding his head in satisfaction, Qin Guang's voice was similar to Light's. After all, how could a few words of thanks be enough for him to help someone so much? At the very least he wouldn't lose anything. At the very least it was better than being reset. Forget it, I'll be a good person to the end. Take a rest. I'll send the wraiths to you. You just have to deal the last blow. Qin Guang looked at the other side. The gods' projections were becoming more and more scattered. They were obviously stealing the wraiths. Though he didn't know how to spend the reward points, it wouldn't hurt to let the gods' projections gain more points. Once he had made up his mind, he sped up. This time he truly displayed the power of a martial sage. He turned into a merciless ray of light that circled around the spot where the crowd was standing in a circle. Wherever he went, the seemingly terrifying vengeful spirits fell to the ground one after another, never to rise again. Only a martial artist like him, who had reached the pinnacle of perfection, could control his strength to the pinnacle in such a rapid attack. Every vengeful spirit that was struck down by him fell powerlessly to the ground, but did not explode. Only then did the 8 girls and 1 child truly understand what it felt like to be leveled up with their main account. They happily went up to deal the finishing blow, and almost effortlessly obtained a kill. Even the speed at which the 9 of them dealt the last blow could not catch up to the speed at which Qin Guang was killing the wraiths. The area that Qin Guang circled became larger and larger. He only stopped when he had circled a circle that was 50 meters in diameter. He turned around and looked behind him. He saw that in the vast Black Sea, he had forcefully cleared out a circular island. Behind him, there were countless wraiths that had fallen in a mess. The 9 of them continued to deal the last blow. Qin Guang took a deep breath and did the same thing again, expanding the area that he covered. As time passed, the area that the Pantheon projections were killing increased. It had even surpassed the small group of 6 led by the middle school student. At that moment, the 6 of them were in an awkward situation as they huddled in a corner and shivered. They were secretly happy that they finally didn't have to face these monsters. However, after carefully saving up a few reward points, they saw the Pantheon projections killing so happily. They also remembered that this was only the first mission. They felt that if they didn't take the opportunity to save up more reward points, even if they managed to escape this time, they might not be able to survive in the subsequent missions. However, the 4 people who had died in the hands of the Pantheon projections were still fresh in their minds. Even if the person called Yu Ting had promised not to take the initiative to attack, they were still afraid that they would be killed if they tried to steal the kill. These gods were extremely cunning. Only God knew if they would keep their word. They could not help but look at the girls from afar. They realized that they were being led by the old player, Qin Guang. He was killing the wraiths with ease. They were indescribably envious. If they had known this would happen, they would have recognized him as their boss from the start and let this old player lead the team. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. The middle school student watched as the wraiths that he had his eyes on were smashed to pieces by a tall god's projection. He gritted his teeth, but his eyes were filled with unwillingness. If I was also an old player, I wouldn't be in such an awkward situation. Unfair. This game isn't fair. Chapter 1163. Wait a moment. The veteran gamer is going around in circles. It looks like he might have a conflict with the gods' projections. The eyes of the high school student lit up. We are of the same race. Will he help us? With this thought in mind, the middle school student looked forward to Qin Guang expanding the scope to his side. After waiting for a long time, even though the team of women and children under his protection became stronger, the veteran gamer and the gods' projections didn't have a conflict. The observant high school student discovered that the veteran gamer was arrogant, but the gods were avoiding him. They were afraid of the person who didn't have a combat uniform. The high school student gritted his teeth. He had an indescribable feeling. Why are they like this? If everyone is in a fair situation, I won't lose to anyone. The high school student was indignant when he saw the 9 reward points on his control panel. Not only did he repair the combat suit, but he had also just finished charging it. He even exchanged for a bottle of gold sore medicine and a Red Bull as a backup. After spending a total of 4 reward points, he still had a surplus of 9 points. This meant that, as an ordinary person not long after entering this strange killing mission, he had adapted quite well to the new environment and completed more than 130 kills. There can't be anyone better than me in this world. That person just had a higher starting point than me, the high school student thought. He wasn't the only one who was envious of the 8 girls and the child. The MMA instructor, the wise elder, and the 3 strong men were also envious. They were luckier than the high school student, so they didn't get killed by the gods' projections so early. The 9 of them, led by Peasant, didn't indulge in the pleasure of killing the gods. As their reward points increased, they made use of every minute to study the functions of the control panel, especially the ability enhancement in the reward point shop. It's done. We can finally use it. Everyone, when you accumulate more than 20 points, you can activate the ability enhancement. Peasant shouted at the top of her lungs. She wasn't just reminding her team. She was also reminding the other 4 teams of gamers. She was being kind, but the gamers might not think so. They might even think that she was showing off. Save it. Do you think we're as lucky as you? At a time like this, there's still a man to protect you? You guys easily got 20 points, but we worked so hard and only managed to save a few points. What kind of sarcastic remarks are you making? The 3 brawny men who had gathered together replied from afar. Peasant froze and turned to look at the nonchalant Qin Guang. Then he looked in that direction and said, I didn't mean that. Qin Guang stopped and looked at the brawny man who spoke. Shut up. Didn't I give you a chance? Who was the one who told me to get lost in the first place? I didn't say anything. The burly man said unwillingly. Qin Guang shrugged. But you didn't help me either. But she didn't help. The strong man pointed at Peasant and shouted. Qin Guang smiled. Luck is also a part of strength. They were close to me, so it was easier for me to save them. But most of all, I wanted, you understand? To be able to make me happy, it's their luck and creation. Do you understand? Besides, I saw that you had a chance to save someone, but you ignored it. Since you chose to stand by and do nothing when others were in danger, what right do you have to accuse me of not caring about your lives? Ever since he entered the world of slaughter, Qin Guang had never relaxed his observation of others. He kept everyone's actions in his eyes and remembered them in his heart. If I save that person, I'll die too. But you're different. You're so strong, so why are you so selfish? The burly man was still unwilling to give up and continued to spout nonsense. Qin Guang started moving again. As he slapped the vengeful spirits around him, he casually replied, Your logic is pretty good. Just because I'm strong, I have to be the nanny of the weak? Who made the rule? Are you mistaken? I'm not obligated to help any of you. This isn't a matter of whether I should or shouldn't. It's a matter of whether I want to or not. Qin Guang was so infuriated that he laughed. This fellow thought he was an NPC grandpa who existed to save the dying and heal the injured. When he spoke, his nose was in the air and he was arrogant. He looked like someone who hated the rich. I'm poor, I'm right. If you're rich, you should donate. If you want to engage in moral blackmail, look at the situation. Are you stupid or am I stupid? You see, I seem to be very strong in the first mission, but with the nature of the Holy Grail, there has never been a mission that I can easily crush with my eyes closed. Alright, who knows what else will come next? I'm willing to help a portion of the people, but it's against my principles. Do you expect me to kill all of them and be a selfless martyr? Peasant, what are the options in your ability enhancement? Qin Guang returned to Peasant's side and asked. Peasant only had 20 points to enhance, but Qin Guang had 100 points in his pocket. However, the ability enhancement option in Qin Guang's interface was still in a gray state, and he couldn't select it. I don't understand. What do you mean? I thought it would be like normal online games like agility, strength, physique, or special skills, but it's not there. What's there? There's only one thing, awakening. Awakening? What's awakening? Qin Guang was bewildered. He didn't know what the massacre world was up to. First, it copied the initial interface of the Legend of the Sword and Fairy. After being criticized by Qin Guang, it changed to a new interface that had its own intellectual property but was crude. That wasn't the end of it. Then it displayed its crude game copywriting ability. This was a far cry from the Sacred Grail that he knew. In the previous Sacred Grail, no matter how crude and stupid the graphics were, the basic settings were very strict. For example, when Qin Guang was learning to play the piano on the Virginia, the NPC's clothing was exquisite and modern. It was completely in line with the original movie, perhaps even better. Besides that, the NPC's lines were well designed. The expressions and tone of the NPCs when they threw things were classic, unlike the Massacre world. It looked like it was done well. There was the ancient Roman Colosseum, the monster cards, the group mission, the control interface, and even the reward point shop. The Massacre world wanted to create a grand scene, but it turned out to be a dog instead of a tiger. It didn't create a grand scene and instead it created a mess. Qin Guang felt that something was amiss from the start. There was something fishy about the electronic notification sound. However, Qin Guang had already cut off contact with Lioli, and he had no one to ask about it. "Ah, Mr. Dang, don't you know? I was going to ask you about it." Peasant looked bewilderedly at Qin Guang. In the end, Qin Guang put on an unfathomable expression and continued, "Everyone's different. Although I have no idea what ability you've awakened, don't tell anyone about it in the future. This is your trump card." "I see, I understand." Peasant was enlightened and turned his face away. Qin Guang was relieved to see that he had successfully fooled her. He was furious. Why did others have it but not him? Qin Guang looked stiffly at the gray ability enhancement on his panel. He thought to himself, is it because my foundation is too high and my ability is too strong? That's why I'm immune to the primary enhancement? However, just as he was pondering over this in his mind, he suddenly felt the power of the Holy Grail fluctuating violently beside him. He turned his head and saw Peasant closing her eyes and spreading her arms. Her body was emitting a strange flowing light. The entire process lasted for 5 seconds. Then she opened her eyes slowly and the flowing light faded away. On the surface, she didn't look any different from before, but Qin Guang could sense something different. She was still the same person, but her aura was completely different. Not only that, but a notification also rang out in Qin Guang's mind. "Congratulations. Peasant, you're the first gamer to awaken. The rest of the gamers, please work hard." Peasant was stunned for a while. He scratched his head embarrassedly and said, there's a notification? I'll test the effect." Peasant dashed out and pounced on the wraiths that Qin Guang hadn't defeated. Wherever she went, there would be chaos for a moment. Her skills had greatly improved. She could always easily avoid the vengeful spirit's attacks, and then counterattack with more precise strength and moves, killing the vengeful spirits with her hands. After 20 seconds and killing 7 to 8 wraiths, she ran back to Qin Guang excitedly. "It's much easier. I only need to expend 3% of the combat suit's energy to deal with a wraith. Mr. Adam, thank you for your help. Thank you so much. From now on, I can help others." It wasn't only Qin Guang who was staring at Peasant. Even the distant god's projections were looking at him. The other normal gamers were envious. Qin Guang asked coldly, "You look good. What's your awakened ability?" Peasant grinned and turned back with a smile. "Didn't you say? You told me not to tell others. You're making use of what you learned. All right, I've left enough monsters for all of you to accumulate 20 points. From now on, carry on with your work. AI? What about you?" Qin Guang looked at the god's projections who were killing monsters and said, "I have to kill monsters too. It's enough being a good guy." "Are you angry because I didn't tell you about my awakened ability?" Peasant suddenly came to a realization. Qin Guang shook his head and said, "I'm not angry with you. Since the wraiths aren't a threat to you, you have to rely on your own strength. I can help you this time, but what about the next time? When the magical beasts become stronger, I can't protect myself. I can't be like you and sacrifice myself to save others. It's meaningless. I've brought you into the profession. Isn't that enough?" No, I didn't mean that. I have many things that I don't understand, so I wanted to ask you." Qin Guang's mouth twitched. "Gosh, I don't understand as many things as you do." "All right, enough with the nonsense. Look at those people. While you were talking nonsense with me, they didn't stop for even a moment. You are more talented than them, but they are catching up to you very soon. In addition, you always share all the information you get and you always use the most generous thoughts to figure out others, but haven't you noticed? They're stealing your kills, including that child. Nobody reminded you to move faster." As the calmest and most rational person in the entire slaughtering world, Qin Guang could be said to have seen everything. In just a few short minutes, the selfish nature of humans was completely exposed, including the brawny man who had been talking nonsense to him. Peasant didn't say anything as he looked at the retreating back view. He turned his head to look. Like what Mr. Dang said, the other creatures were making use of every second to kill the wraiths. Even though there were already 2 or 3 people who had completed their awakenings one after another, they did not go after the healthy vengeful spirits. Instead, they quickly harvested the heads of the vengeful spirits that did not have the strength to fight back. Forget it, I'll make myself stronger. I'll become stronger. Peasant looked at the notification on his operation panel. The first awakening required 20 reward points, but the second awakening required 2,000 reward points. Perhaps I should tell him about my ability? Peasant looked at Qin Guang, who was killing the wraiths, and thought to himself. He didn't know how to describe it. Time. While he was in a daze, Peasant's right foot and other foot stepped on the neck of a wraith. She suddenly realized something and became infuriated. Move aside. All of you stop. All of you stop. Who wants to listen to you? This woman was the one who had killed 9 of them with her own strength. At this moment she seemed to be in high spirits. Peasant was furious. Is that so? Do you think this mission is over? Do you think you can survive by stealing kills like you're doing now? There are 9 of us. Look at what you've done. They don't have enough awakening reward points. Peasant grabbed the woman's wrist and pointed at the 3 women who were too slow and couldn't steal a single kill. The 3 of them were vexed. The wraiths had awakened before them, so their killing efficiency was much higher. Before they could get close, the wraiths would be stolen by the wraiths. What has it got to do with me? The woman struggled to free herself from Peasant's grasp and explained with a black face. Peasant asked, Is that so? Have you forgotten who was the one who brought the dying vengeful spirit to you when you were about to die? Why can't you be merciful to others like him? He's so strong, so he doesn't care about the reward points. But we're different. We have to survive. Even if it's just a little bit of improvement, it's necessary. The woman continued to explain, but her hands didn't stop moving. She was expanding her killing range. If you don't want to be ostracized by me and Mr. Dang, you can steal as many kills as you want. Otherwise you'll have to rely on yourselves. Peasant used his trump card. Though Qin Guang didn't say that he would continue to protect them, the others didn't know about it. Peasant's trick was effective. The other women stopped attacking obediently. They weighed the pros and cons compared to improving themselves. Being protected by the wraiths was more attractive. Good, I'm glad that you've awakened. Let the 3 of them complete their awakening. Before that, don't attack. Good, the 9 of us will form a line and move to the left, away from the direction of the masked goddess. Kill. Qin Guang, who was a distance away, turned his head to look in the direction of the wraiths. He sighed inwardly. It was hard to tell what was in a man's heart. His kindness had bred lazy people. The other wraiths didn't have such good conditions, so they were able to awaken and mature quickly. Fortunately, Peasant wasn't a mediocre person. He controlled the situation in time. Otherwise he would have been disappointed. While cursing in his heart, Qin Guang looked at the 700 reward points that he had accumulated. Why haven't I strengthened my abilities yet? He was angry, but he maintained his smile. Qin Guang raised his hand and was about to slap the wraiths to death. However, a tall silhouette flashed past him and the vengeful spirit was reduced to ashes before his eyes. Qin Guang turned to look at the silhouette that was leaving. The wraiths were one of the god's projections. His kill had been stolen as well. Yu Ting shouted softly from a distance, "Oh no! Julie is an idiot." He acted on his own. Chapter 1164. Julie didn't think he would be in any danger. Although Yu Ting had said that this man was strong, Julie thought he was just being paranoid. The bald man didn't hit the wraiths with much force. He was just a little faster, but there was no way he could break through Julie's defenses. Even if I'm just a projection, even if it's billions of times weaker than my real body, I'm still Julie. Even in the entire divine world, my Julie divine body can be considered as the strongest level below the God Emperor. Idiot. Why aren't you running? Julie muttered to himself, but then he heard Yu Ting's thunderous roar in his ears. He turned to look, only to see the bald man called Noon pouncing towards him with a gloomy expression. Lord Yu Ting, why don't you let me test his abilities? However, Julie wasn't bothered by Qin Guang's words and casually turned around to face Qin Guang. Yu Ting was furious. This idiot. Sir, just let him try. In any case, even if his projection is gone, it won't affect our strength too much. Beside him, Vessine tried to comfort him. Yu Ting's face was gloomy, but he had no intention of helping Julie. No, if we both maintain restraint, then they will remain afraid of us. That guy called Noon won't attack us first, and we'll have the upper hand in terms of momentum, allowing us to steal more wraiths. But if we both fight, the peace will be broken, and that's not good for us. Noon wants to kill one to warn the others so that normal players can get more reward points. He can kill Julie? Of course he can. Vessine understood after a moment's thought. She looked at the dark gray dot on her interface and cursed. Damn it, why can those mortals use it to awaken but we haven't done anything yet? I've almost got 300 points. Why is that? Yu Ting shook his head. I don't know. This is a realm we've never touched before. I said that this isn't a simple game and we don't know much more than those mortals. Wethany, you guys move faster. I'll go save God Monarch Might. On the other side, a loud noise was heard. Qin Guang, who had transformed into a stream of lightning, finally clashed with the giant man who was nearly 3 meters tall and had arms as thick as a thigh. He didn't go all out but only used about 30% of his strength. The god's projections wanted to test Qin Guang's limits, and so did Qin Guang. Like what he had said to Peasant, in this unfamiliar environment, it wasn't necessary to reveal all his trump cards and misjudge his capabilities. He could only use them at the crucial moment. He didn't even use the peerless divine skill that he learned from the realm of true martial. He just used the true martial divine skill and rushed forward. He raised his fist and punched out. However, although his punch looked ordinary, it seemed to have sucked in all the air within a radius of several feet the moment it was thrown. Muffled sounds that sounded like thunder rang out around him, and when Sir God Gigantic Strength saw it, his expression changed in shock. His movements didn't look fast, but why did he feel that he couldn't dodge? No, why did he have to dodge? You're just a mortal. Why should I be afraid of you? God Monarch Might roared, lowly mortal, since you want to die, I'll grant you your wish. He didn't dodge. He mimicked Qin Guang's movements. He turned around, looked back, glared angrily and waved his arms. The next moment, God Monarch Might's elephant-like arms suddenly swelled up. The tight-fitting leather clothes on his body inconceivably swelled up as well, revealing the outline of his rock-like muscles. The bald Qin Guang, who was 1.9 meters tall, was as short as a child in front of him. The two completely disproportionate fists collided with each other, and an invisible shockwave spread out from the point where their fists collided. The normal players who were watching from afar felt their eardrums vibrate. It was as if someone had hit their head and they were stunned by the shockwave. Everyone was shocked. What kind of cheat did the man called Dangwu and the god projections use? We've all awakened. Other than obtaining special abilities, our physiological functions are much better than a normal person's, but we're still dizzy from the shockwave from the fists of these two animals. Their strength isn't on the same level as ours. It's like the difference between a normal player and a player with full-level godly equipment. However, they weren't the ones who were the most terrified. It was God Monarch Might who was fighting against Qin Guang. The corners of his lips were still curled up, but the smile froze on his face in an instant, and it turned into fear. He lowered his head and looked at his right arm blankly. His face was filled with disbelief. His all-out punch was actually blocked by someone else. Why do you look so surprised? I was just testing you. Did you give it your all? Then I'm afraid you're going to die. Qin Guang retracted his right hand and stomped with his left foot. He took a step to the right and then stomped with his right foot. His entire body shot forward like a cannonball. He stretched out his right hand and stabbed at God Monarch Might's heart like a sharp knife. This time he used 70% of his strength. He decided to kill a god projection. It wasn't a hasty decision, but one that had been made after careful consideration. It was obvious that these god projections didn't take normal players seriously. That was why, before the game mission started, they had killed normal players as a joke. At the start of the mission, for normal players had been killed. A debt of blood had to be paid with blood. It wasn't that they didn't want to pay, it was just that the time wasn't right. Qin Guang wasn't too sure what kind of role he should play in this world of slaughter quest, but from his feelings he was definitely more inclined to be an ordinary player with a human touch, and not these pantheon projections who had their eyes on the top of their heads and had no regard for human life. Apart from that, after he had killed the vengeful spirits, they should have a certain level of understanding of his strength. However, this god monarch might still dare to show off in front of him. This meant that they still looked down on normal players. Just as Yu Ting had said, they only treated normal players as cannon fodder. Perhaps they might be of some use in the upcoming massacre mission. Although Yu Ting had told the gods not to attack normal players before the mission ended, based on this god monarch might's performance, Emperor Yu Ting's authority among the god projections wasn't unquestionable. Many god projections seemed to be on good terms with him, but they were actually at odds with him. It was a pity that Azure was offline. Otherwise, he might be able to ask her about Emperor Yu Ting's position in the endless celestial realm. He felt weak. However, no matter what, this mentality of the god projections was a huge hidden danger in an environment where both parties might have to work together. It might even cause the mission to fail in the end. Hence, Qin Guang decided to kill the gods. Not only did he want to take revenge for the normal players who had died by their hands, but Qin Guang also felt that it was necessary to establish his authority. He wanted to let the gods know that no matter how powerful they were in the endless celestial realm, this was the massacre world, his territory. Even if you were a dragon, you'd still have to coil up. Otherwise, as the difficulty of the quest increased and the phantom beasts became stronger, the tests for the normal players and the gods' projections would become more and more cruel. At that time, if one of the gods' projections suddenly attacked the normal players, the consequences would be devastating. On the surface, killing this god monarch might seem to lower the overall strength of all the players participating in the mission, but in the long run, the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. God Monarch might looked at the approaching bald-headed Qin Guang and wanted to retreat with all his might. However, be it in terms of strength or speed, he was far inferior to Qin Guang. He could only watch as this fatal sharp knife got closer and closer. No, no. God Monarch might shouted as he struggled to retreat. He continued to shout, "Lord Yu Ting, save me." In his hundreds of millions of years of life in the endless celestial realm, God Monarch might had never felt fear. He even clearly knew that this might only be a game to him. Even if he really died, it would not be the end of the world. However, mysteriously, in the instant that his projection was faced with the possibility of death, he felt an extremely strong sense of fear. He forgot about his dignity as a god and his previous pride. Perhaps it was because his original body had not come, and his projection had not completely inherited his will as a god. In the face of death, he would still reveal the weakness of a mortal. "Stop!" Yu Ting, who had already closed in on God Monarch might, shouted. At the same time, he suddenly stretched out his right hand. A bright and dazzling pale white lightning shot out from his palm with a sizzling sound, piercing toward God Monarch Might's back. However, when the lightning power neared God Monarch Might's back, it suddenly changed direction, drawing a zigzag line and avoiding God Monarch Might's hand knife that was aimed at Qin Guang. All of this took a long time to describe, but it all happened in an instant. Qin Guang's hand knife was hit by the lightning just as it was about to cut God Monarch Might's chest. His 5 fingers were connected to his heart. Intense pain came from his palm, and the intense numbness spread from his right hand to his torso. Qin Guang frowned. This strange lightning divine power was indeed different. It was like grabbing a high-voltage wire. But he wanted to save someone like that? In his dreams, Qin Guang took a deep breath. The inner force in his dantian surged like a huge wave. His aura, which had been slightly hindered by the lightning power, quickly recovered. As his right hand trembled, arcs of electricity scattered from his right arm into the air. He had used the true martial divine technique and the Earth Exploder's elemental body to scatter Divine Emperor Yu Ting's divine power. Die. At the same time he shouted. His right hand stabbed forward at an even faster speed, piercing God Monarch Might's chest. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream came from God Monarch Might's mouth, but it was to no avail. Qin Guang pulled back his right hand, exerted strength in his right leg and leaped into the air. His body twisted 360 degrees in the air, and his right leg lashed out like a whip. The tip of his foot kicked the wound on God Monarch Might's right hand again. Divine Monarch Gargantuan flew backward like a cannonball. He was still flying in the air, but no blood gushed out. Instead, a dark green fluorescent liquid spurted out from the wound on his chest, drawing a long arc in the air. Virtual Protoss Monarch Might has died. Reset. Before God Monarch Might landed, the electronic notification of the Heavenly Holy Grail sounded. Then with a bang, the 3-meter-tall God Monarch Might fell to the ground. Dark green flowing light continued to leak out from his chest like a fluorescent fountain. Then God Monarch Might's body continued to emit light. He gradually softened, turning into a liquid that spread all over the arena. About 30 seconds later, the dark green liquid completely disappeared as if it had never existed. This fluid seems to have been absorbed by the ground of the Colosseum? Qin Guang frowned. He was guessing a few things in his mind. He gradually understood the truth of the world of slaughter. Among the participating gamers besides himself, the others should be divided into 2 camps. Peasant and the others should be humans or perhaps not normal humans. They had the possibility of awakening. Though many gamers had died since the start of the game, the survival rate of the grievous spirits was more than 70%. That wasn't something a normal person could achieve. If Peasant and the others were real people, then the Heavenly Holy Grail would have a screening process when selecting the gamers. They were all outstanding geniuses with amazing abilities. The real title of the gods' projections was the virtual Protoss. There were two key factors. First, they were Protoss, the true gods of the endless world of gods. Perhaps Azure knew them. In addition, the so-called virtual should be referring to their clones that were projected. In the real world, a normal person downloaded a large-scale MMORPG client such as the popular World of Warcraft. Then, the person created a game character in World of Warcraft. The game character could move around under the person's control, complete missions, use skills, and kill monsters to level up. The game character could be seen as a projection of the person in the virtual World of Warcraft. Chen Guang didn't have an answer as to why the deaths of normal gamers and the virtual Protoss were different. Seeing Yu Ting's puzzled expression, Chen Guang knew that he didn't know either. What? Do you want to avenge him? We can spar. Chen Guang stood proudly as he spoke to Yu Ting, who had his back to him. Yu Ting turned around and asked, "Why did you kill him?" Chen Guang shrugged his shoulders and said, "When you killed normal gamers, why didn't you ask why? I didn't like him, so I did it willingly. Do you have a problem with that?" When he fought with Yu Ting just now, Chen Guang used all his strength, but he wasn't afraid of Yu Ting. The combat power brought by the true martial divine skill was only one of his trump cards. His real trump card was the Earth Exploder's immortal body. If Yu Ting had used all his strength, the power of the thunder power would only be of the same level as before. It would only cause trouble for him, but it wouldn't be able to kill him. But he only stole one of your vengeful spirits. You're weakening all of our strength. I told you before the mission is over, I won't fight with you anymore. Yu Ting defended himself. Chen Guang was amused. You've subverted my understanding of God. You guys are really complicated creatures. You're both simple and cunning. He stole one of my vengeful spirits and that was enough to anger me. So I killed him. It's that simple. Also, since you know that we need everyone's strength to complete this mission, why didn't you control your subordinates from the beginning? Alright, enough with the nonsense. Get lost. Chen Guang was impressed by this Yu Ting Divine Emperor. He really wanted to call him King Retard. After saying this, he looked up into the distance and pointed at his feet. All the virtual Protoss, listen up. The place where I stand is the boundary. None of you are allowed to cross over. The vengeful spirits here belong to the normal players. The vengeful spirits over there belong to you. If any of you cross over again, I don't mind letting you have a taste of being reset. Yu Ting Divine Emperor, do you have any objections? Yu Ting looked at Chen Guang's position. Although it was a little out, it was roughly in the middle of the competition area. Alright. He had to agree to Chen Guang's request. The death of Lord Gigantic Strength was a wake-up call for all the virtual Protoss. This perverse big boss did have the intention and ability to kill the projections. Although Gigantic Strength's death was regrettable, if it could wake up the other gods, it might be a good thing. Dangwu, I'm giving in now because I don't want the mission to fail. Yu Ting Divine Emperor said before turning to leave. Chen Guang shook his finger. No, you're afraid of something else. The phenomenon of Gigantic Strength's death made you feel uneasy. Chen Guang was referring to the absorption of Gigantic Strength's corpse. Yu Ting's body trembled. A true god doesn't fear death because we can't die. Is that so? Then why did that guy called Julie ask you for help? Chen Guang interrupted. Yu Ting could not refute. After chasing Gigantic Strength away, Chen Guang immediately turned to the normal players behind him and clapped his hands. Alright, you guys should hurry up and clear the monsters. Everyone will rely on their own skills. Also, kid, don't look at me with your teeth clenched. I know you're not happy with me, but it doesn't matter. If you're really that capable, kill a few more wraiths and get more reward points. Little brat, show some respect to the old players. Chen Guang was talking about the middle school student. He was really worrisome. The middle school student turned his face away silently. He had always thought of himself as a genius until today. He didn't know when at noon had noticed him, but it was clear that this man had been observing everyone in the killing fields. When all the normal players completed their first awakening, the seemingly terrifying wraiths no longer posed a threat to them. As time passed, the number of wraiths in the 1-kilometer arena decreased. Finally, after Chen Guang killed the last wraiths, the Slaughtering World mission came to an end. Chen Guang was bewildered as he looked at the 2,138 reward points on his control panel. Why didn't the old man awaken the option? Didn't peasants say that the second awakening required 2,000 reward points? But I'm still in a gray state. Chapter 1165. Congratulations to all players for completing the first task. The second task will be completed in 10 minutes. Good luck. Following the notification in their minds, everyone's tense nerves finally relaxed in an instant. Many of them even slumped to the ground. After a short break, everyone stood up one after another. This time, most of the ordinary players consciously came to a place not far from Qingguang. Even the most rebellious middle school student came over reluctantly. However, the MMA instructor, who seemed to be the most gregarious from the start, stayed a little further away. He was very unhappy. He wanted to win over a group of people as quickly as possible so that he could seize the initiative in the next task. But his plan was ruined. If everything had developed as he expected, then no matter what the purpose of this massacre mission was, he would have continued to succeed just like he did in real life. He was born to be a leader. He was born to be a team leader. He always felt that he must have been involved in some incredible event. As the saying goes, when heaven is about to bestow a great responsibility on a man, it must first torture his will and tire his muscles and bones. These vengeful spirits were both a challenge and an opportunity. He also lamented his own luck. He did not die before he could succeed like Lu Chang, who had fallen to the hands of the virtual Protoss early on. But now, his plan was crushed in the cradle by Qingguang's overwhelming advantage. Feeling everyone's eyes focused on him, Qingguang looked around calmly. Now, Qingguang gradually believed one thing. These people were not NPCs of the heavenly Holy Grail. They should all be real living people. They should be the same as him. What entered the massacre world was not their real bodies. Instead, they should be bodies that were reconstructed by the heavenly Holy Grail on the basis of the original spirit and body. Therefore, their current appearance should not be their original appearance in the outside world. This was the same as him. There was also one more thing that they couldn't be sure of. If they managed to survive until the world within the cup mission was completed without being reset, would their memories in the world within the cup be preserved after everything was over? But this was not important. When the boat came to the bridge, there would be a way. Let's take it one step at a time. Mr. Dang, you told us that you are a veteran player. Now, it has proven that you are indeed stronger than we imagined. In short, thank you very much for your help. If it were not for you, we might have died on the spot like the others. Please allow me to express my sincere gratitude to you on behalf of all the survivors. Thank you. It was the hale and hearty old man who broke the silence. Looking at his energetic appearance, it seemed that his awakening effect was better than the average person's. Qingguang nodded. No need to thank me. I'm not that generous. I'm just helping you. I'm just helping you because I'm guessing that I might need for the next mission. Qingguang didn't want to be held hostage by morality to happen again. He couldn't let these people feel that it was natural for him to help them. Thus, he decided to say some ugly words first. The old man seemed to have guessed that he would answer this way. Without changing his expression, he said, "Still, thank you." Qingguang nodded and said, "It's good that you have such awareness. I'm sure you have many questions. What is this place? Why were you brought here? To be honest, I don't know. I can't answer your questions. Just like the doubts in your hearts, I am also wondering why I came here. Why is it me and not someone else?" When everyone heard this, they nodded in unison as if they deeply felt the same way. However, we have no choice. The hesitant and cowardly gamers are mostly dead. Of course, there are some unfortunate gamers who died at the hands of the virtual gods. Now you should understand one thing. If you are not careful, you will die a horrible death. I can't tell you what it means to be reset because I haven't been reset before. But it's definitely not a good thing, right? According to the previous situation, I discovered that most of you are selfish. Yes, extremely selfish. You've exposed the ugly side of human nature. That's why I only helped Peasant and his companions. If you weren't of the same race as me, I would have wished for all of you to die. From my standpoint, I have no meaning to lecture you. Even if I lecture you, you might not listen or believe me. I'll remind you that you'd better wake up early in the next mission. Even if you think you're a genius, you'd better believe in the power of the team. Otherwise, you'll die a horrible death. I won't be your nanny forever. You'd better choose a trustworthy companion to form a team. Communicate your awakened abilities so that you can fight together. As for whether you can leave this place alive and how to leave, I can't tell you the answer. As Qingguang was speaking nonsensically, the notification of the sacred grail rang in his mind. Everyone was expressionless. Qingguang knew that only he could hear the notification. Redeemer exclusive notification. Mythical massacre mission description. Survive the 9 mythical beast trials and kill all the mythical beasts. Additional explanation. Every time you kill a mythical beast, you will receive a reward. The stronger the mythical beast, the higher the reward points. The reward points can be used to upgrade abilities and purchase props. Now, he finally understood the privilege of being the owner of the Sacred Grail. You unlucky sacred grail, you finally realize that I'm your owner. Those who don't know might think I'm a passerby. Qin Guang immediately changed his words to the others and said, "All right, now that I have concrete information, listen up." He pretended that he had other teammates and sources of information. Towards the end, Qin Guang gradually lowered his voice and turned his head to look at the virtual Protoss in the distance who were secretly eavesdropping on him. Forget it. Even if he kept it a secret, the others would hear him when they whispered. So what if they heard him? The ancient Roman Colosseum that we're in has another name, the Mythical Massacre. We have completed the first mission, which is to deal with the first batch of mythical beasts. Next, there are 8 more batches waiting for us. We have to deal with a total of 9 mythical beast trials. There is no doubt that the next batch of mythical beasts will be stronger and more difficult to deal with. I can't imagine how powerful the last batch of mythical beasts will be, but you must remember one important point. You must improve the strength of your team as soon as possible. Now, I'll tell you a piece of good news. Those virtual Protoss have not awakened even once. It seems that they can't choose to strengthen their abilities. Qin Guang told everyone. He found that although he tried his best to resist, in the end, he really became a novice mentor who led the newcomers on the road. The legendary old grandpa of the novice village had no missions and rewards to give to others. Although knowing that there were 8 more batches made people feel desperate, the feeling in everyone's heart was different. Everyone finally had a clear goal. After saying this, Qin Guang turned around and left with a cold expression. He had said what he needed to say. He did his part well and his conscience was clear. As for what these people could achieve, it was up to them. He deliberately pretended to be unapproachable because he didn't want to be caught and asked questions that he couldn't answer. After Qin Guang's cold expression, the others formed their own teams. Everyone had a balance in their hearts and everyone would make their own choices. The original 5 batches of people became 4 batches, and the distribution of personnel changed greatly. No one thought that the small team of the Sonda coach would inexplicably become stronger. Perhaps he didn't understand it himself. The first to make a choice were the 3 strong men who had been unlucky enough to be alone. They took the initiative to find the Sonda coach, hoping to cooperate with him. In addition, 2 of the 6 people led by the middle school student were hesitant. They also changed teams and joined the Sonda coach's team. Watching this scene from afar, Qin Guang keenly caught the anger and dissatisfaction hidden in the middle school student's indifferent eyes. He almost laughed out loud. You deserve it. Do you know what it means to be a team leader? Either you have to be like this old man who has the ability to command hundreds with a single call, or you have to let the people who follow you think that you are someone they can trust and rely on. You have always been overly selfish and condescending, so it would be strange if you didn't get abandoned by others. As Qin Guang was complaining, he saw 3 members of Peasant's team walk out and join the Sonda coach's team. They were the first child and the first woman who sent the vengeful spirit to finish off the opponent. The other woman relied on her own strength to obtain 8 kills. She was the core strength of the Peasant team. The 3 of them enjoyed the best protection and obtained the best information from Peasant. With their talents, they developed rapidly in mission number 1. He didn't expect the 3 of them to join the Sonda coach. Qin Guang was relieved. After a short period of turnover, the Sonda coach's team had 12 members. With the addition of the 3 members, the team would have a total of 15 members. Compared to other teams, they had an overwhelming advantage. Perhaps they wanted to join the strong, or perhaps they realized that they wouldn't receive much help from Peasant, or perhaps they wanted to form a strong alliance. The 3 of them made this decision. Why are you doing this? Peasant was more surprised than Qin Guang and he asked Qin Guang. Miss Peasant, thank you for your help in mission number 1. As Mr. Dang Wu said, we should unite. Why don't you join us? Everyone's goal is to survive. There's no need to divide into teams. One of the women persuaded Peasant. The Sonda coach said, Not bad, Miss Peasant, I admire your ability. If we can unite, it'll be better for everyone. Peasant looked at Sherlock's gaze and felt that he wasn't as righteous as he looked. She turned her head to look at Qin Guang from afar, but Qin Guang was already sitting cross-legged on the ground like an old monk, even closing his eyes. Don't pretend. If the 6 weakest women join your team, they'll be used as cannon fodder sooner or later. Unexpectedly, the sinister voice of a middle school student came from the side. The Sonda coach said angrily, Don't slander me, you selfish wimpy brat. Don't quibble. That's just who you are. Qin Guang, who was eavesdropping, nodded. The middle school student was right. When they were fighting with the Wraiths, Qin Guang discovered that a member of the Sonda coach's team was improving rapidly. He was even ahead of the Sonda coach at the start. However, there was one time when he teamed up with the coach to fight against an enemy. This man was stealthily tripped by the MMA coach and took a heavy blow from a vengeful spirit. He wasted 70% of the combat uniform's energy in vain, and in the end the MMA coach took back his throne as the #1 expert in this small team. The others didn't notice anything amiss, but it didn't escape Qin Guang's eyes. "You'd better not team up with him." Qin Guang secretly transmitted his voice to Peasant. Peasant's bewildered eyes lit up. "Thank you for your kind intentions, but I'll consider it. You can make your own decision." Peasant turned his head and stood to the side. The other 5 girls were weak at the start. Because of Qin Guang's support, they were able to surpass the others in the middle of Mission 1. The girls, who were weak in terms of character and ability, exchanged glances and returned to Peasant's side. Contrary to everyone's expectations, only the other 5 people by the old man's side did not show any signs of wavering from the beginning to the end. It seemed like they had already decided that following the old man was the most reliable choice. "All gamers, Mission 2 will begin in 5 minutes. Kill all cockroaches." Along with the sudden notification sound, a brand new monster card appeared in everyone's mind again. Monster card, cockroach. Cockroach, also known as the oil thief, is an insect that often appears in the kitchen. It's very scary. More than half of the women in the world will scream in fear when they see it. Everyone was puzzled. What? Cockroach? What happened to the increasingly powerful magical beast? What the heck was a cockroach? What's wrong with the description in your monster card? Qin Guang carefully read through the description of the monster card and tried his best to find something fishy. But after pondering for a long time, he could only come up with a painful conclusion. Gosh, wasn't this the oil thief that DeBeo saw in his hot pot restaurant? She was also called a cockroach. Though a cockroach was scary, it didn't make sense. This was a serious world in Cup. Not long ago, many gamers had died under the claws of the grudge spirits. The grudge spirits were only the first wave of magical beasts. There was no reason for the second wave of magical beasts to be the cockroach. For those who had already passed the test of the vengeful spirits, the weak ones had almost all been eliminated from the slaughter mission. Wasn't this too much of a joke? Not only was Qin Guang bewildered, but the other 4 gamers were also bewildered. They were in disbelief. "I used to be afraid of cockroaches, but after the previous incident, I'm not even afraid of death. Moreover, I'm in such a place. How can a cockroach scare me?" A girl with a scar on her face beside Peasant said bewilderedly. To save on reward points, she didn't use a bottle of gold sore medicine to heal her wound. Peasant muttered, "Don't let your guard down. Perhaps these cockroaches are strange. Perhaps they are extremely large and powerful." Mr. Adams said that every wave of magical beasts will become more terrifying. The others around him nodded in agreement. "That's possible. That's right. Mr. Adam must be right." Qin Guang, who was eavesdropping, nodded silently. It was no wonder he thought highly of Sherlock. "That's right, this must be the unlucky realm in the cup," purposely lowering his guard. Perhaps these cockroaches were mutated. It had to be at least as tall as a person, and it also had long legs as thick as a person's thigh. The long legs also had to be covered with sharp barbs that could cut through gold and jade. Coupled with the cockroach's furry body, it was quite terrifying. They waited for a few minutes. The cockroaches are about to descend. Countdown begins. 10-9, as the beep sounded again, everyone tensed up. Everyone leaned their backs against the wall, ready to fight a new phantom beast at any time. Finally, as the countdown reached 0, the large arena once again lit up with a faint light. But why were these glimmers all spread on the ground? They looked a little small. Could it be a standard size but infinitely strengthened golden-armored godly cockroach? Qin Guang thought silently. Before the faint lights dissipated, the rustling sounds of the cockroaches crawling reverberated throughout the arena, suppressing the cheers of the spectators. When everything was dark again, the spectators saw the crawling ground clearly, countless ordinary cockroaches. That's right, it wasn't very big and it didn't have any golden armor or silver wings. It looked exactly like the cockroaches that were commonly seen in the kitchens of every household. Impossible. Don't mess with me. Qin Guang didn't believe it and took a step forward. Pia 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 sounds were heard incessantly. He lifted his leg and saw that he had trampled tens of cockroaches to death. Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Gosh, they were really ordinary cockroaches. That, Mr. Dang, didn't you say that every batch of magical beasts would become stronger? On the other side, Peasant flipped his leg over. His shoes were stained with the corpses of the invincible magical beasts' cockroaches. The corpses were emitting light smoke and dissipating rapidly. Hearing those words, Qin Guang's face turned red. The slaughtering world was truly unscrupulous in order to slap his face. Aren't you making me feel awkward? This is just a short break. It's the appetizer. The appetizer. Don't let your guard down. When he said those words, Qin Guang felt that his dignity had been shattered. The taste of this dish must be terrible. A girl beside peasant added fuel to the fire. Alright, I've really broken my cool this time. What a terrifying second batch of magical beasts. Qin Guang expressed that he felt that the slaughter world was purposely causing trouble. Chapter 1166. It's destroying my reputation. I feel like I'm being targeted by the entire massacre world. Though it was hard to believe Qin Guang had such a feeling. When he felt that the heavenly sacred grail's notification was emotional, he felt that something was amiss. He had no evidence and nobody could doubt him. It was just a guess in his mind. Alright, don't be suspicious. The second batch of magical beasts is indeed these thieving women. You can decide if you want to kill them. According to my years of experience, massacre missions don't shoot aimlessly. There must be a deeper meaning. Qin Guang said to peasant and the other girls as he jogged forward. He was deliberately mystifying things. He was struggling on his deathbed, trying his best to maintain his dignity. Of course, as he walked out step by step, the creaking sounds under his feet never stopped, and the light smoke that kept gushing out from the soles of his feet all betrayed the difficult situation he was in. Cockroach, you died so tragically and casually. Why don't you struggle a little? That way I can redeem my reputation. No, the cockroach army was defenseless against his iron hooves. Every stomp of his foot killed a family. It was like a prehistoric giant entering the Lilliputian kingdom. If the cockroaches had intelligence, they would have screamed and fled in all directions. At the same time they exclaimed, Godzilla! Godzilla is here. What a huge Godzilla! Fortunately, after a long period of accumulation, Qin Guang's reputation among the normal gamers was solid. Just now, it was just a few girls who were joking with him. Seeing his solemn expression, they really believed his words. One by one, they restrained their emotions and seriously faced these ferocious phantom beasts in front of them. Their method of dealing with the magical beasts was the same as Qin Guang's. They used their feet to stomp on the magical beasts. Perhaps it was the nature of some women to be afraid of cockroaches. Even though they had survived the first wave of the magical beasts, they couldn't be nervous when facing such a powerful magical beasts. In terms of performing arts, they had liberated their natural instincts. Unlike Qin Guang, who was stepping on the cockroaches in a roundabout manner, besides peasant, the other ladies were behaving strangely. It looked just like the ones in cartoons where they would use their little fists to hammer your chest. It was so cute. They clenched their fists tightly and stomped on the ground on their tiptoes. Qin Guang wanted to say that they were wasting their energy, but on second thought he had killed at least 100 or 200 cockroaches, but his reward points had not increased at all. Whether it was the strength of these cockroaches or the reward points, everything he had said before was overturned. These unlucky cockroaches didn't have anything special about them. They were as weak as they looked. Even the reward points they gave were very little. God knows how many of them would have to be trampled to death to get 1 point. He just dealt with the vengeful spirit, and now he encountered a cockroach that didn't even have the strength to resist. It was like he'd just eaten delicacies and was suddenly given a plate of cornbread. How could he eat it? The ladies on peasant's side were behaving like that, and the rest were even more unreliable. The gods' projections didn't do anything. After they cleared the cockroaches, they sat down as though they were on a vacation. The other teams, including the high school student and his 3 members, followed suit and stayed by the wall. They looked on coldly and didn't want to interfere. The MMA coach's 15-man team was a bit more diligent, but they didn't go all out to kill the cockroaches, nor did they waste their energy like the girls. They just calmly strolled around the competition area, even talking and laughing with each other. The 6 members led by the hale and hearty elder didn't treat the cockroaches lightly. They treated the cockroaches as though they were the vengeful spirits. As expected of an experienced leader, Qin Guang was filled with admiration for Su Tao. Su Tao managed to gather a group of strangers under him in such a short period of time and even brought out military management. This wasn't something that an ordinary person could accomplish. At the other end, peasant discovered that the 5 ladies were behaving strangely. He reminded them, don't be too relaxed. This isn't your home, it's a massacre mission. Someone will die here. Though we don't know the purpose of the cockroaches, there's no reason for a massacre mission to be meaningless. We have to believe in Mr. Dang's judgment. These cockroaches must have a deeper meaning. We can't let go of any opportunity to become stronger. A lady at the side said, "That's right. Killing 1,000 cockroaches won't give us any reward points, but what about 10,000? Even if we can save one more reward point, it'll be good. Remember not to waste the energy of the combat uniform." With this reminder, the other four immediately straightened their mentality. They no longer foolishly stomped their feet and acted cute. Instead, they really turned into cockroach killers and began to tap dance seriously. Qin Guang didn't have time to care about them. He circled the arena at his own pace. Others would let their guard down in front of weak magical beasts, but Sherlock, who had experienced the world in the cup, wouldn't let his guard down. Others didn't know how sinister the heavenly Holy Grail was, but he was experienced. However, people would always change, especially in this kind of endless and boring repetition. Gradually, people began to realize that something was wrong. These unlucky cockroaches looked simple, but they were a trap. Only God knew how many times more cockroaches were compared to the vengeful spirits. They seemed to be endless. They had already cleared a large area, but when they turned around, these cockroaches were densely packed all over the ground. Then they cleared the area again, but after a while, these damned cockroaches appeared again. They didn't see the faint light when the cockroaches appeared, but the cockroaches were endless. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours passed. The people who were excited at first gradually grew tired of this seemingly endless killing. Even the team led by the hale and hearty old man began to slack off. The high school students and the Sonda coach were even worse. They chose one person to take turns clearing the cockroaches near them. As for the others, they sat together, sleeping and playing cards. When Qin Guang passed by them, he asked them where they got the cards. They told Qin Guang that they exchanged their reward points in the mall. The cards were very expensive, as high as 100 points per deck. "Do you guys have to be so extravagant?" Qin Guang started to roast the prodigal mode. The man who exchanged the cards raised his hand awkwardly. "Mr. Dang, my awakened ability is called Magician. I can use the cards as a prop. This deck of cards has a self-healing function. It's my weapon. I hesitated for a long time before I made up my mind to exchange it. Anyway, the second awakening requires a whole 2,000 points. I'm too far away. So, I plan to get my weapon as soon as possible. It can also further enhance the combat power of our team." The Sonda coach next to him explained, "It's like this, Mr. Dang." Then, the magician randomly picked a card from his partner's deck and threw it out with a flick of his wrist. The card spun and flew in a circle with a diameter of more than 10 meters. It killed countless cockroaches along the way and finally returned to the magician's palm with black smoke. Qin Guang was stunned. "So this is what awakening is all about. This ability is interesting. The problem is, when can I use the old man's awakening ability? Forget it, I can't let others know that I can't use the ability enhancement." Qin Guang could only put on a look of approval. "Well, not bad. Your ability is quite interesting. Okay, you guys play." Qin Guang turned around and walked away. Behind him, another person screamed, "Bastard! You took my big ghost away." Accident, it was an accident. After chatting with Peasant for a while, Qin Guang discovered an embarrassing matter. As the owner of the Holy Grail and the Savior, his reward point shop wasn't as comprehensive as the others. The items that could be purchased in the merchant shop were different. The magician could purchase a magic poker card with 100 points, and Peasant could also purchase an item. She said it was an hourglass that was used to measure time, but it was more expensive than a poker card. It cost 1,000 points and she couldn't afford it now. Even if she could afford it, she wouldn't buy it. She was eyeing the second awakening that was worth 2,000 points. After finding an empty corner, Qin Guang resumed his rhythm of trampling the Nanshan oil thief. Then he discovered why he couldn't kill all the cockroaches. It turned out that the black smoke formed by the crushed cockroaches didn't completely dissipate like the vengeful spirits from before. Instead, they stuck close to the ground and slowly floated towards the edge of the Colosseum. Then, at a position far away from the gamers, the black smoke gathered again and transformed into cockroaches. Qin Guang was assured. "See, I told you these cockroaches aren't that simple. Do you see the terrifying regenerative ability? Aren't unkillable monsters scary? According to my years of reading online novels, when these cockroaches are repeatedly killed, they will gather again and undergo other changes. For example, they will mutate into the golden-armored divine cockroach." This time, he learned from his mistakes and didn't reveal his conjecture and judgment. The best way was to gather all the black smoke of the cockroaches and transform into a huge creature. Then he would be able to suppress it with the force of a mountain. Time passed by quickly. Finally, after a full 8 hours, everyone slowly realized that the number of cockroaches had begun to decrease significantly. Everyone was happy except for Qin Guang. Gosh, I worked for 5 hours for nothing. After so long this lousy thing, there's no way to do it. I didn't even get a single reward point. Does that mean I killed cockroaches like an idiot for nothing for 8 hours? I'm furious but I can't tell anyone. While clearing the area, Qin Guang was secretly looking at the players that had been playing for hours. For some reason he felt that those trash were looking at him as if they were mocking him. The god's projection was amazing. Qin Guang thought that the gods who had a long lifespan could adapt to boredom. But later, when these gods also began to pay reward points to buy some nameless items, he had no choice but to admit defeat. They had actually exchanged for 10 smartphones and then started playing Honor of Kings. Only God knew how they connected to the server. Perhaps they made a request to the world in a cup when they exchanged for the smartphones. The virtual gods weren't idle either. They came up with all sorts of schemes and bad ideas. After killing the last cockroach, Qin Guang silently covered his face. He felt that many gamers were mocking him. Forget it. Fortunately, there were a few gamers who were humiliated with him. Qin Guang turned to look at Peasant and the other gamers. Mister, these cockroaches don't seem to be anything special. One of the ladies asked bewilderedly. Qin Guang felt that he couldn't pretend anymore. He had to admit that he was bragging. At that moment, the electronic notification of the heavenly sacred grail sounded. Congratulations to the gamers for killing all the cockroaches within 10 hours. If you exceed the time limit, the extermination mission will fail. The mission rewards will be distributed according to the gamers' contribution points. Wow. As soon as he said that, everyone was dumbfounded, and their heads were filled with confusion. Was that the case? This unlucky massacre mission had left out 2 of the most important points in the mission description. Time limit. The final reward distribution mode. What a scam. Noon, total contribution points 73%. Obtain 7,300 reward points. Peasant, total contribution points 9%. Obtain 900 reward points. XX, total contribution points. Every gamer was named. Besides Qin Guang, Peasant, and the other gamers, most of their contribution points were less than 1%. Qin Guang's eyes were brimming with tears. See, I said there must be a deeper meaning. This was the extermination mission reminding everyone that to survive, they had to do their best at all times. See, if it wasn't for this old man turning the tide, the entire mission would have failed and everyone would have died, okay? Ah. The old man had turned the tables. With an unfathomable smile, Qin Guang continued, do you guys understand now? The reason why I can become a veteran player is because I know that there are traps everywhere in these killing missions. Every time you let your guard down, death will befall you. If I learn from you and slack off, the final result will be that we all die together. Traps are everywhere, including the mission notification. Have you learned it? At this moment, his image in everyone's eyes was incomparably tall and imposing. Looking at the over 9,000 reward points in his pocket, Qin Guang could only feel elated in his heart before he entered the reward point store once again. Gosh, he couldn't buy anything. Chapter 1167. Coach, I'd like to exchange for a trench machine. I'd like to play Dota. As Qin Guang was complaining, Peasant came up to him mysteriously and said, Mr. Dang, I don't lack many reward points to exchange for the second awakening. Is there any problem with my well-prepared strategy? Peasant looked enviously into the distance. The magician who exchanged for the poker cards was complaining as he fiddled with his weapon, the poker cards. As he activated his ability, 54 cards swirled in the air and scattered in all directions. He was furious. AI, these D*MN cockroaches are deceiving me. Why didn't you say so earlier? With my ability, I can even become a mister. Shut up. Are you as angry as me? A young lad's body flashed and a flamethrower appeared on his back. He wasn't spouting nonsense. With the power of the flamethrower, it was effective against cockroaches. Peasant was envious of the equipment that the others exchanged for, but the others were envious of her 900 reward points. However, there was no point in regretting it. Qin Guang's 7,300 points were more eye-catching than hers. D*MN Lord Yu Ting, we've been tricked by this massacre mission. Now, those mortals are becoming stronger and stronger, but our strength has not improved at all. The situation isn't looking good. Don't worry, the mortals aren't a threat. They're getting stronger because they're too weak. Their so-called awakening is meaningless to us. Vasani asked bewilderedly, how can that be? Their abilities are interesting. I really want to snatch that guy's poker cards. Oh no, I want to use forceful means to get them. Only mortals need to awaken. We're gods and we have innate abilities. We don't need to enjoy the so-called awakening. What does it mean to strengthen our abilities? What conditions do we have to achieve to use it? Yu Ting thought for a while and said, in my opinion, the mortals are awakening and we are recovering. Recovering? That's right. Recover the abilities that we originally possessed, and let the shackles that were placed on us gradually loosen. I really don't know which great being created this game. It can even suppress the power of my immortal emperor realm. I can even sense that this is far from the limit of this world. Vesine nodded. That makes sense. As expected of Lord Yuding. Don't flatter me. I miscalculated in the second stage of the massacre mission. But it's not too late for us to wake up to this realization. It's just that it's a little frustrating that we can't steal monsters from mortals. I've fought with Dangwu once before. The current him is indeed stronger than us in this world. Zhu Li's death was not unjust. He only had himself to blame. He deserved this outcome. Dangwu is a natural-born fighter. Even in such an environment he can still maintain such a strong fighting spirit. He won't even let go of such a weak creature. That's right, he must be plotting something. His aura hasn't changed at all since he entered this world. Up until now he hasn't used those reward points at all. There's something fishy going on here. At this moment, Qin Guang, who was being envied by everyone, didn't feel very happy. I'm not a goddamn natural-born fighter. I'm just bragging and I can only brace myself. I'm just a dead duck with a dead mouth. I've already bragged to the girls. These cockroaches are very powerful, so how can I not do it myself? You guys see that I have a lot of reward points and look like I'm very rich. You guys think that I'm saving up for an ultimate move and want to exchange for a powerful treasure in one go. In fact, I just can't spend it. All players please pay attention. Quest May 3rd begin at any time. Quest hint. Survive the attacks of the infected orc laborers and resist the invasion of evil energy. Monster card. Infected orc laborer. Because of Guardian Mediva's betrayal, the eternal peace has been broken. Under Ghoul Dan's leadership, the orcs passed through the dark portal and appeared on the continent of Azeroth. Among these orcs, only a few orcs like the Frostwolf clan remained pure. Most of the orcs had been infected with evil energy and turned into green-skinned monsters. The orcs were already very strong, and after being infected with evil energy, they gained even more terrifying strength. Even an orc laborer is a laborer of immense strength. Before he knew it, the hint for the third quest had finally arrived. Compared to the previous two quests, the third quest's prompt gave off the feeling that the person was not a good person. First of all, unlike the previous two quests which gave a clear time for arrival, this unlucky third quest said that it could begin at any time. This was a feeling that Qin Guang was very familiar with. Then it did not ask anyone to kill all the orc laborers, only to let everyone survive. Although everyone knew that they had to be killed, this hint gave people a different feeling. Moreover, evil energy sounded very scary. It also revealed that when the orcs were killed, the evil energy in the orc laborers' bodies would leak out and infect others like a contagious disease. Also, according to the experience from the first quest, the Vengeful Spirits monster card said that it was an agility-type phantom beast, but its attack power was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Now, the unlucky orc laborers had all sorts of extremely strong and terrifying strength from the start, so it was definitely a strength-type monster. What the heck? The developer of the lousy massacre mission had a different judgment of strength compared to ordinary people. Either the massacre mission had no knowledge of strength, or the lousy game's understanding of strength was too strong. It was like an adult and a child holding the same thing. The adult felt it was easy, but the child felt it was strenuous. This phenomenon was called misalignment of perception. Mr. Dang, the third quest looks very scary. Should I buy the hourglass? Peasant seemed to have no opinion, but she was very smart. Qin Guang was a trustworthy person. He was a veteran massacre mission gamer. She felt that asking for Qin Guang's opinion would help her avoid unnecessary detours. It was a pity that she had underestimated Qin Guang's experience and asked the wrong person. Don't panic. Weapons and equipment are external objects. The most important thing is to awaken one's own abilities. Can you exchange for the hourglass at any time? Yes, at any time. Then you should observe for a while. You have to make a clear judgment of the situation. When the situation is so bad that you can't protect yourself without using the hourglass, it won't be too late to exchange for the hourglass. What kind of situation is considered bad? What kind of situation is unable to protect yourself? Think about it carefully. Qin Guang and Peasant chatted for a long time and Peasant was bewildered. Ultimately, Qin Guang didn't say anything. While the two of them were chatting, streams of light suddenly rotated, and dozens of huge figures at least 5 meters tall appeared in the arena area of the ancient Roman Colosseum. At the same time, a prompt sounded in everyone's ears. The infected orc laborers are about to charge. Countdown. It was the familiar countdown. Qin Guang and Peasant were solemn as they prepared for battle. 1, 0. As the unlucky countdown came to an abrupt end, the orc silhouettes that were still bright a moment ago suddenly dimmed, and what appeared in front of everyone were dozens of gigantic creatures scattered around the arena like starfall. The oily green skin looked a little bewitching. It flickered with a dense glimmer, like a firefly in the night sky. The orc laborers weren't cute. Their naked bodies were covered with blood vessels and tendons. Their muscles looked like rocks, and they were a few times stronger than the Hercules that had died at the hands of Qin Guang. They looked like they were 3D printed from the same mold. They looked ferocious and they had fangs that were as thick as arm bones on their lower jaws. Then they didn't give the gamers any time to breathe. With a deep roar, the infected orc laborers charged at the nearest gamers like a tank. Then, without giving the players any time to catch their breath, they let out a deep roar, and the infected orc laborers launched a tank-like death charge at the nearest players at lightning speed. The eyes of these beastman laborers flickered with a blood-red radiance. They had entered the legendary berserk state from the start. With their huge bodies, the moment they started to move, their auras were extremely frightening. They were simply like slowly moving hills. This feeling of power was like the charge of the Gundam group. Even though the closest orc laborers to Qin Guang were tens of meters away, even Qin Guang felt that the imposing manner was unstoppable. The scene and imposing manner made Qin Guang think of a long-lost joke. 59 went down the mountain. So many 59 moves. I'm going down the mountain. Qin Guang cursed in his heart. What a scam. Does your countdown clock start from 2? If it wasn't for the fact that your movements were so slow that they looked like they were moving in slow motion, I would have been scared to death by you guys. Wait a minute. Why do these guys look slow in my eyes? Qin Guang squinted his eyes and looked at the approaching orc laborers calmly. He felt that these big guys would take at least 10 seconds to reach him. It was even slower than a junior high school student's 100-meter sprint. These guys look like they're moving in slow motion? Did I become stronger? Did my dynamic vision suddenly improve? Otherwise, with the imposing manner of the orc laborers' charge, there was no reason for it to look like they were moving in slow motion. That's right, that must be it. I knew it. I'm the master of the heavenly holy grail. How could I not take care of it? This stupid grail can read people's minds. It knows to secretly help me cheat and strengthen my abilities like a thief. I didn't even use any reward points. This feeling was quite good. It was just like when he was visiting relatives and friends during the New Year's Eve. His relatives and elders would pull him aside like thieves and then stuff 2 New Year's money into his hands. They would even instruct him, "You must hide it well. Don't let your parents take it. It's the new year, buy whatever you like." Strange, these infected orc laborers are moving very slowly. Am I seeing things? I haven't even used my abilities. As Qin Guang was feeling smug, Peasant's bewildered voice came from beside him. What? Do you think they're moving slowly? Qin Guang was shocked as he asked. Another girl appeared beside him and said, "It doesn't look slow. It's really slow. Don't tell me that these orc laborers are just like silver spears, good to look at but useless?" Qin Guang asked, "Be honest. Is your job in the real world as a nightclub DJ?" The girl blushed and said, "No, I'm only the manager of Great Sword. I don't do that myself." All right, you win." At this moment, Qin Guang felt his heart calm down. Why don't I test the abilities of the orc laborers first? Peasant was eager to try. After the second wave of roaches, she let down her guard. Moreover, the orcs were moving very slowly. Qin Guang waved his hand and said, "No, don't be anxious. I'll test them first." He spoke loudly for the benefit of Peasant and his companions. He was also reminding the other normal gamers of the game. But before he could finish his sentence, a huge black shadow suddenly flew in front of him, and the strong wind it caused even his scalp to feel cold. Then a loud sound was heard. The black shadow was pasted to the wall of the Colosseum. A flattened figure slid down from the wall like a pancake. He turned his head and looked fearfully in another direction. Everyone followed his gaze and saw a beastman laborer slowly retracting his right fist. His movement was really slow, but the strength behind it was quite shocking. Everyone was scared out of their wits. The monster's strength was ridiculous. Even the boxing coach, who was eager to give it a try, quietly retracted his feet. Qin Guang sucked in a breath of cold air and thought to himself, "It's time to prove this old man's ability." He walked towards the fell energy beastmen and said, "Everyone, don't panic. It's just that the divine race is very weak. The same thing can happen to, gosh." Then he flew away. While flying in the air, he thought that it was illogical. Wasn't normal strength just kinetic energy? Wasn't kinetic energy mass multiplied by the square of speed divided by 2? So why was the seemingly slow punch of the fell energy orc so terrifying? He had only tried to touch it with his palm and he was sent flying. My physics teacher isn't happy. Forget it. Don't get hit easily. Remember, don't make any physical contact. Otherwise your bodies won't be able to withstand the impact. You'll be smashed into pieces. After returning to Peasant's side, Qin Guang said in shock. The ordinary gamers didn't need his reminder. They had already fled in an orderly manner. It wasn't that they were afraid. Even the legendary Mr. Dang and the Protoss were sent flying hundreds of meters by a single punch. Nobody dared to collide with them. This slaughter world's definition of power was indeed very problematic. Fortunately, the massacre mission's definition of agility was also problematic. The agility-type mythical beasts were cute, but the strength-type mythical beasts were as slow as snails to the gamers who had awakened their mythical beasts once. Though they couldn't defeat the orcs, the Colosseum had a diameter of 1 kilometer. There were only tens of orcs and they were relatively scattered. The gamers could run in circles to avoid them. As a result, such a spectacle appeared in the Colosseum of Rome. Dozens of slow-moving green-skinned guys roared angrily as they chased group after group of people to play eagle catches the chicks in the circular arena. Although they were angry, they couldn't do anything about it. Chapter 1168. Just like that, more than half an hour passed. Even the players, who had strengthened their physique after the awakening, began to feel tired. Even though they were only jogging, they could not stop. But these fell orcs were still full of fighting spirit and momentum. Compared to when they first appeared, their speed did not change at all. At the same time, within this half an hour, no ordinary player dared to challenge the dignity of the orc laborers. It was not that they were afraid, but they were no match for them. Because when they were almost unable to restrain themselves and took the initiative to attack, the virtual Protoss was one step ahead of them. But the result was the same as before and they flew even further. Even the stronger Pantheon and Mr. Dang could not fight back. Faced with this situation, as long as one was not a fool, they would be able to make the right choice. In addition to physical contact, those who had redeemed their weapons and equipment also took out their weapons to test the power of their weapons. Dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. The magician's poker cards could not even cut the skin of the orc laborers. Flamethrower was even more desperate. Facing the oncoming flames, this guy actually opened his mouth, took a deep breath and swallowed. Just as Flamethrower's face was as green as the fell orcs, this guy's chest swelled twice, and he actually spat out flames from his mouth. Not only that, this flame even had a faint green tint to it, and it came right at the face of Flamethrower, who was in a daze. Under everyone's horrified gaze, Flamethrower was not paying attention, and his whole body was wrapped in a strange green flame. Fortunately, this guy's reaction was fast enough to protect his face in time, and he rushed out of the flames. But just when everyone thought that he had successfully escaped, the green flames on his shoulders, waist, head, and other parts of his body when he rushed out suddenly became more vigorous. There's something wrong with this will-o'-the-wisp. It's absorbing my strength. Flamethrower screamed, and then desperately slapped the parts of his body that were on fire. But it was to no avail. As he slapped, even his palms began to burn. Save me. Save me. No. Brother Spitfire's screams did not last long. In a short span of 20 to 30 seconds, under everyone's horrified gazes, Brother Spitfire, who was alive and kicking not long ago, turned into a pile of bones under the raging flames. His novice combat suit was unable to save his life from the demonic flame. In just 20 to 30 seconds, the light on his combat suit flashed like a flashing light, indicating that the energy of his combat suit was being consumed at an insane rate. At the same time, he was also using his reward points to recharge the combat suit in an attempt to preserve his life. However, all of this was futile. In the end, this pile of bones that was emitting green smoke crashed to the ground, and then completely broke down into even finer ions that disappeared into the air. Ase Khan died reset. The merciless sound of the heavenly Holy Grail's notification rang in everyone's ears. Everyone could only calm down and continue running while being chased by the orc laborers. After everyone completed their awakening, the number of players decreased again. There were only 32 ordinary players left. Such a tragic scene not only shocked all the ordinary players, but even the virtual Protoss who had nothing to do with them, secretly changed their expressions. The orc laborer had completely absorbed the raging flames of the flamethrower and even infused the demonic energy into it. At the cost of a human life, the gamers finally had a complete understanding of the demonic energy. After the second wave of magical beast cockroach baptism, the third wave of magical beast-infected beastmen gave everyone an extremely profound lesson. If the Massacre Fantasy was a game created by the game developer, the CEO of the game company would have hung up the game developer to give him a good beating. The gamers didn't dare to retaliate. "Mr. Dang, we can't keep running like this. We have to do something. Otherwise, our stamina will be depleted," a lady from the peasant team said. One of the ladies in the peasant team said. She had the weakest stamina and was panting. She had the urge to drink a bottle of Red Bull, but she held it in. Qin Guang replied, "I'm thinking of a solution. The massacre mission can't be an unsolvable situation. Trust my judgment." "That's right, there must be a solution." Peasant encouraged him. Qin Guang was speechless. "Don't be so confident in me. How can I tell you that I'm just making things up?" "That's right. We have Mr. Dang." At this time, the Sonda coach who was passing by nearby also chimed in. Qin Guang silently turned his head and looked at him. "That's good. When you need me, you suck up to me. When you don't need me, you act like a wolf. A person like you won't survive more than 3 chapters in a novel." "Scram. Don't you want me to brace myself and test the demonic energy? I'm not a 3-year-old child. I'm doing things without fail." Qin Guang countered peasant's attempt to goad him into action. Another half an hour passed and the previous girl finally had no choice but to drink a bottle of Red Bull. Although she still had a lot of reward points, it was only a matter of time before she ran out of reward points to replenish her stamina if the situation continued. This was not the worst part. Everyone gradually discovered that the air in the Colosseum was filled with a strange smell. It was a little sweet, but it was more of a fishy smell. When they looked at the farthest perimeter wall, they could see a faint green color. It was the dark energy of the orc laborers. After inhaling the dark energy, everyone's footsteps became heavier, and their stamina consumption increased. "Dang Wu, aren't you very powerful? Can you think of a solution?" On the other side of the virtual Protoss, Vasani took the initiative to strike up a conversation with Qin Guang. It was clear how delicate the situation was. Qin Guang turned his head and glanced at the god. He looked as if he didn't want to talk to her and turned his head away. But he knew that Wethany wouldn't speak without thinking. She had Yu Ting behind her. She must have been instructed by Yu Ting to speak. Yu Ting was probably conveying his intention to cooperate through her. Qin Guang's response was also interesting. He didn't reject her outright, nor did he nod. He just kept them in suspense. He didn't panic. He even wanted to laugh. Yu Ting's initiative to approach them meant that in this slaughtering world, the virtual gods weren't strong. Not only could they be killed by him, but they could also die in the mission. They just had a higher starting point than ordinary players. But now, with the first awakening of ordinary players, the gap between the two was narrowing. In essence, they were also players in this game, not bosses that fell from the sky. In a sense, he might be the boss that they might have to deal with. Qin Guang didn't know that he had already grasped the most important core element of this slaughtering world. So, no matter what, he couldn't cooperate with them. He especially couldn't let them get their reward points from him. Besides, he wasn't really out of ideas. Although the dark energy was infectious, there was no reason for it to be more advanced than the talent of the Earth Burner. The Earth Burner, a top elemental creature, could devour the dark energy in the air, but he didn't do so. After seeing that Yu Ting was also sent flying, Qin Guang deliberately suppressed his talent. He wanted to force Yu Ting to use his trump card. Another 2 hours passed and the scene changed again. As the dark energy in the air became stronger, on average each player drank at least 2 bottles of Red Bull. But they didn't use their own reward points. Qin Guang used his reward points to give them for free. Anyway, he couldn't spend it. He still had more than 9,000 points, so he might as well be lay foam. There was also good news. He found that the virtual Protoss had also begun to drink Red Bull. Although they lasted longer than ordinary players, it showed that their stamina was limited. "I'm sorry, but this old man got a huge harvest of 7,000 points in the second wave. This old man alone has nearly 10,000 points. The first wave of vengeful spirits provided a total of nearly 10,000 points, and the second wave of cockroaches provided exactly 10,000 points. Qin Guang alone accounted for nearly half of the total number of reward points. About the virtual Protoss accounted for the remaining 60%, and the ordinary players accounted for the other 40%. It seems that my little brothers and I can last a little longer than you guys. Yuding lad, hurry up and show me what you're capable of. Don't try to act mysterious with me. Here are 5 bottles. We still have to continue. As Qin Guang spoke, he casually tossed 5 bottles of Red Bull to the coach. He had purposely placed that fellow last. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dang. The boxing coach continued to run and escape while shedding tears of gratitude. Qin Guang looked at his expression and felt that he was really going further and further down the path of an old NPC grandpa. Perhaps for them, this was the description of the side mission outside of the main mission, the killing mission. Survive for 3 hours under the attack of the third wave of phantom beasts. Wait for the novice mentor, the elderly warrior sage at noon, to give you 5 bottles of Red Bull to recover your stamina. Qin Guang felt a little stifled. Just as he was thinking about this, there was a violent vibration in the distance. He turned around in shock and then grinned. He looked at Yu Ting, who was wrapped in dazzling lightning. He nodded slightly. This guy finally couldn't sit still anymore. I knew you were pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Fighting with me? When it comes to pretending to be a pig, I'm a professional. At this time, the divine emperor Yu Ting, who was bathed in lightning, floated in midair and confronted the orc laborer in front of him in disbelief. Behind the divine emperor Yu Ting, another 40 to 50 virtual Protoss were spread out in a fan shape. They actually blocked the orc laborer under the wall. Not only that, the orc laborer on the side of the virtual Protoss was spread out in a very strange way. It seemed that when they were escaping before, they had used clever positioning and seduction to lure the other orc laborer who might have interfered with their movements to the other side. Only one of the orc laborer was trapped in place by the Protoss, who were known for their speed. Then they suddenly sped up, shaking off the orc laborer behind them and focused on the lone orc. But with the terrifying power of the fell energy orc, even if it was alone, it was still full of combat power. The fell energy orc did not feel any fear. It still roared and raised its arm, smashing it like a battering ram at Yu Ting in front of it. I'd like to see what you're going to do. Seeing this, while Qin Guang was pondering, the divine emperor Yu Ting moved again. The lightning around him flourished, as if he had turned into a milky white ball of lightning. He avoided the fell energy orc's fist and went straight for the giant's chest. The lightning hit the orc's chest, and in the next moment, it was sent flying hundreds of meters away. But the ball of lightning that was sent flying did not stop at all. In the blink of an eye, it flew back to the orc laborer at an incredible speed, and once again hit the orc's chest. Once again it was sent flying. Chapter 1169. Even the movements of the other fell orcs froze for a moment before they continued their charge. A large group of orc laborers were getting closer and closer to the virtual Protoss gathered together. However, before they could get close, many of the virtual Protoss scattered in all directions. Only Yu Ting was still standing in front of the orc laborer who had been pierced by the lightning spear. The orc laborer was still struggling in pain, showing its indomitable vitality. Yu Ting approached it again and grabbed the other end of the lightning spear with his hand. The fell orc lying on the ground waved its arms, trying to hit Yu Ting in front of it, but it was all in vain. Its speed was already very slow, and now that it was injured, its body was shrouded in plasma. The power of lightning was constantly eroding its nerves and muscles, making its movements even slower. Yu Ting floated upside down in the air, his hand gripping the lightning spear from top to bottom. Only when the beastman laborer's huge arms swept over would he release his grip for a brief moment. Most of the time, his body could only be seen swaying left and right, skillfully dodging the attacks of the beastman laborer. Every time he held the spear, the plasma covering the orc laborer's body became more dazzling, and the crackling sound of electricity became louder. On the other side, the scattered virtual Protoss had taken away most of the fell orcs, but there were still 2 of them rushing straight in Yu Ting's direction, getting closer and closer. Finally, before the 2 fell orcs reached Yu Ting's side, the big guy on the ground suddenly tilted its head and died. Yu Ting quickly pulled out the lightning spear. With a flash of light, the spear disappeared from his hand. Immediately, the light on his combat uniform began to flicker wildly. He looked back at Qin Guang with a hint of provocation and dissatisfaction. This guy must have earned a lot of reward points in one shot. Qin Guang thought. With the number and combat power of this fell orc, it was worth at least 100 reward points each. Forget it, it's time for me to make my move. At least I finally know one of Yu Ting's trump cards. It was the lightning spear that he just pulled out. Its power was not to be underestimated. If it stabbed me, I might not be able to withstand it. The balance of the middle realm of the Holy Grail was so bad that it made one's hair stand on end. They were all players, so they should stand at the same starting point. It did not make sense that these virtual Protoss were so much stronger than normal players from the very beginning. Also, it was obvious that the virtual Protoss had not used his reward points yet, but this Divine Emperor Yu Ting had directly pulled out a spear from his crotch. Fine from his body. This is going to scare me to death. The biggest bug in the slaughter world, that is, Qin Guang himself, was currently shamelessly ridiculing the garbage balance of the slaughter world. Qin Guang's but was extremely crooked. The same words came out of Yu Ting's mouth, but it didn't seem out of place at all. Qin Guang had a perfect physical body, a martial sage's inner strength, and the innate talent of the Great Earth Explosion. He was the most unbalanced aspect of the game. After taking a deep breath, Qin Guang shouted at the normal players, "Everyone listen up. First, lure all the orcs to my left. Try to gather them there. Then, when I give the signal, gather towards my side immediately." The normal players noticed how the virtual Protoss dealt with the fell orcs, but they could only be envious. If they wanted to defeat the orc laborers one by one like the Protoss, there had to be a prerequisite. Just like fighting the magical beasts, they had to have a main tank in front to attract the boss's firepower while the other players dealt damage. Based on the current situation, the attacks of the normal players were unable to break the defense of the orc laborers. It was like scratching an itch through the boots. The main damage output had to be from the main tank. "Mr. Adam, do you intend to do the same? Is there a problem?" Peasant, who was being chased by two laborers, turned his head and asked uneasily. Qin Guang nodded helplessly and said, "I have to do it even if I can't. I can't let them rob everything, right?" When he finished speaking, Qin Guang looked in Yu Ting's direction. Yu Ting was currently jogging leisurely with the two Beastman laborers following behind him. While running, he kept taking out Red Bull and pouring bottle after bottle into his mouth. He was recuperating. It wouldn't be long before he attacked the second fell orc. About 5 minutes later, the ordinary players had also split the fell energy orcs into two sides. As for Qin Guang, he lured an orc laborer to follow behind him. His method was simple. He just had to turn around and spit at the orc periodically. Qin Guang glanced at the orc from the corner of his eye. Seeing that it was about time, he shouted, "That's enough, come over here." After roaring, Qin Guang abruptly turned to the side and circled around the Beastman laborers. The orc laborer turned around and faced his back against the walls of the Colosseum. Taking a deep breath, Qin Guang turned around and gave Yu Ting a provocative glance, which Yu Ting was also looking in his direction. Yu Ting seemed to have recovered, but he wasn't in a hurry to attack. Qin Guang grinned. His eyes seemed to be saying, "Didn't you want to see my trump card? Old man, I'll show you how good you are." With this thought in his heart, Qin Guang gave Yu Ting a thumbs up before he abruptly turned his thumb down. "Lord Yu Ting, is he praising us?" Vasani asked blankly. The Emperor Yu Ting nodded. "Yes, he's ready to attack." I didn't expect to meet such a respectable opponent in this game. I haven't felt this excited in years. "Is this the legendary Heroes Cherish Heroes?" Vasani asked again. Yu Ting smiled and nodded. "Yes. Even if we are enemies, the strong are always worthy of respect. Then I'll have to return the favor." Vasani looked like she had learned something. She also gave Qin Guang a thumbs down as he retracted his hand. On the other side, Qin Guang silently listened to the conversation between the two gods. He could only silently spit out a mouthful of blood. "Who the hell is praising you? Who the hell wants you to return the favor? Forget it. Let's do it." Qin Guang turned around. The orc laborer had already rushed in front of him. He was waving his huge green fist high and punching down from above. In the face of this situation, Qin Guang did not panic. Instead, he took a deep breath, clenched his right fist and punched upwards. Even the ordinary players who were rushing back and the virtual Protoss who were peeping over were shocked by this scene. "He's going to die." There was a loud bang as the orc laborer's fist and Qin Guang's bamboo-like fist collided. The scene of flesh and blood splattering didn't appear as everyone had expected. Qin Guang just suddenly disappeared. What's going on? Just as everyone was wondering, a bald figure suddenly rushed out of the ground. This time, he avoided the fell energy orc's fist and swung his arm at the orc's chin. The fell energy orc raised its neck slightly, but the bald figure seemed to have hit a spring bed. It bounced back to the ground at an even faster speed and once again sank deep into the ground. The strength of the orc laborer's neck was terrifying. Besides, it turned out that Noon had suddenly disappeared because he had been smashed into the ground. But before they could catch their breaths, the disappeared midday rushed out of the ground again, bringing with it a great deal of dust and mud. Qin Guang once again punched the fell energy orc's chin. The big guy raised his neck even higher. Only then did everyone understand Noon's tactics. Obviously, he had the same level of physical strength as the fell orc or maybe even a little stronger. But the fell orc was too strong, and if he kept getting knocked away he would not be able to maintain a high degree of suppression and always attack the same spot. So he came up with this overbearing and unreasonable tactic, letting the orc hit him from top to bottom. That way he would only fall into the same spot in the ground every time and he would not be hit. This tactic seemed simple, but it was actually insane. Other than him, who else could withstand the continuous heavy attacks of the fell energy orc? And when he landed, there was no cushioning force at all, so he would be hurt twice. But the moment he was smashed into the ground, he could immediately fight back. What kind of explosive power, what kind of recovery was this? Could his body withstand such a heavy burden? Under similar circumstances, the combat power that Qin Guang displayed was equivalent to twice that of Yu Ting. In fact, these people only saw how cool Qin Guang was when he was showing off, but they did not know how hard it was for him to hold on. Every time he was smashed into the ground, he felt as if his body was about to shatter inch by inch, and all his bones were about to shatter, and the pain was like being electrocuted all over his body. At the same time, he used his true martial divine skill and the earth miner's innate self-recovery ability to stabilize the shattered bones and restore the severed muscle fibers and tendons. This consumed a lot of his energy, but when he punched the fell orc's chin, he was able to absorb the fell orc's 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 fell orc. However, the process was unbearable. "Why are you guys in a daze? Come and help." Qin Guang shouted angrily when he saw the normal gamers standing at a distance in a daze. The gamers came to their senses, but they didn't dare to come into contact with the orc labor. Peasant came up with an idea. She asked loudly, "Does anyone have any long-range weapons or means of attack?" The mixed martial arts coach, magician, stood up and said, I can. Why don't you try using my poker cards?" On the other side, Qin Guang and the fell energy beastman were still fighting to their heart's content. Everyone was looking at the powerless poker cards in the air with stiff expressions, unable to do anything about it. "You can't use my poker cards to attack with power," Magician said in distress. His fingers shook slightly, and a king of hearts shot out from between his fingers like a ninja dart towards the neck of the orc labor that was being attacked by Qin Guang. The other gamers weren't able to do so. The same card was blown away by the strong wind created by the fight between Qin Guang and the orc. Then, those with long-range abilities can give it a try first. We'll discuss it later. We'll discuss further, Peasant instructed. And so, 7 or 8 normal players gathered around and started working. One of them hesitated for a short while, and a great sniper rifle appeared in his hand. When others asked him how he got it, he finally had to admit, "Actually, my awakened talent is thermal weapons, but I've been reluctant to use reward points before. This is a weapon I just exchanged, and the 200 reward points that I saved with great difficulty are all gone." The might of his sniper rifle was truly extraordinary. Furthermore, this man must have come in contact with firearms in the outside world. He could always grasp the gap between Qin Guang's attacks and accurately hit the beastman's neck, leaving a deep mark on its green skin. "Forget it, I'll spend my reward points." Another ordinary player stood up. With a flash of light, a dragon chief bow with exquisite craftsmanship appeared in her hand. She pulled the bowstring and a green arrow shot out from between her right fingers. The arrow extended to her left hand that was holding the bow. "This is my awakened ability, Inferior Elven Bow." Inferior Elven? A girl at the side asked enviously and bewilderedly. The bow-wielding lady blushed and said, "This is my first awakened ability. This should be the weapon of the weakest elven race, the ordinary elf." "Will it be a medium elf next time?" "No, it's the inferior elven warrior bow," the bow-wielding lady said as she released her fingers. As the bow-wielding woman spoke, she loosened her fingers, and the magic arrow whistled through the air, piercing the neck of the beastman laborer. Its power was comparable to that of the big sniper from before. As she shot the arrow, her face suddenly turned red and she staggered, but she gritted her teeth and pulled the bow again. At the same time, she explained, with my current ability I can only shoot 2 arrows at once. After that, I'll have to drink Red Bull to replenish my energy. The Beastman laborers that had been shaken off were still closing in. Those with long-range abilities were already firing at full force, while Qin Guang continued to bombard the Beastmen's necks. However, it seemed like he wasn't making enough progress. Qin Guang urged again, "Do you have any other methods? Otherwise, we'll have to retreat when the other orcs are closing in. The Beastmen have amazing regenerative abilities. If we don't succeed, all our efforts will be in vain." The gamers were anxious, but they were helpless. With the physique of a normal gamer, even a small scratch on the orc skin would cause them to be smashed to pieces. At this time, a chubby boy from the Genius Junior High School team stood up weakly, raised his hand high and stammered, I might have a way. Tell us," Peasant urged. The chubby student shrunk his neck after being shouted at by Peasant. "But I'll need everyone to give me their Red Bulls." The coach, who was not far from the chubby student, asked, "What do you mean? What's your ability?" The chubby student looked at the student, who nodded. Then he said, "My ability is summoning." "Summoning? Summoning what? Jenny Turtle? Pikachu?" The youngest girl in Peasant's team asked excitedly. The chubby student's face turned red. "No, it's summoning electrical appliances. To be precise, the heaviest electrical appliance that I can summon is a microwave oven." "What?" Even Qin Guang, who was a distance away, couldn't help but complain. "What kind of superpower is that? Why don't you summon a refrigerator? Isn't that better? Please use a refrigerator." The chubby student was helpless. "Mr. Dang, my awakened ability is too weak. I can't summon a refrigerator." Chapter 1170. Fine. Microwave it is then. Hurry up and get to work. Everyone else, listen up. There's something wrong with the floor of the Colosseum. It will recover on its own. Now the hole below me. Damn the hole below me. *CK. In short, the depth of the hole below is 8 meters, so the time when I show my head is fixed. You guys have to find the right time to smash the microwave on the orc's neck. Don't miscalculate the time and affect me," Qin Guang urged. Although the fatty's ability looked weak and weird, it might be useful in this special situation. Smashing the heavy microwave on the orc's neck was quite fun. In addition, there were always some ordinary players who had strengthened their bodies. The microwave that was thrown over could bring out the awakened ability of these people, so they could not only be spectators. Unfortunately, he couldn't transfer the reward points to others. Otherwise, Qin Guang felt that it would be better to get everyone to give him 2,000 points so that he could upgrade the microwave into a refrigerator. As for why he didn't pay for it himself? Are you kidding me? We're not related. You're not beautiful and you're a man. You didn't hang out with me at first, but you're the little brother of a restless middle school student. I have no reason to be a lay phone, right? Qin Guang cursed in his heart. He stabbed his hands into the soil on both sides of his body and suddenly exerted strength. His whole body rushed up again. Then he stabbed the tips of his feet into the soil beside him and continued to climb up. After 2 or 3 seconds, he appeared under the orc's chin again. As he dodged the orc's heavy punches, Qin Guang clenched his left fist and punched upward at the orc's neck. At the same time, he turned his body to look in the direction of the ordinary players. He saw the boxing coach, whose arms had become particularly thick, holding an iron cube in his hands. It was the heavy new microwave oven. His face was red as he tried to stretch his hands backward. He only heard a loud roar and suddenly twisted his body. The muscles of his arms burst, and the microwave oven flew toward the orc's neck like a cannonball. A little further away, the fat man was sitting on the ground with his legs crossed. He raised his hands and opened his palms. 2 laser beams were moving rapidly under his palms, and a square 3D image gradually appeared in the form of a cross-sectional scan. The moment before Qin Guang's head hit the ground again, he saw this brand new microwave oven take shape. A man at the side leaned over and hugged her. Sure enough, the world was so big that nothing was too strange. This fatty's ability was incredible. When he emerged from the ground again, Qin Guang saw an even more unbelievable scene. The man who was hugging the microwave just now actually played a trick. He grabbed the fastener on one side of the microwave with one hand and spun it like a top. When Qin Guang's head popped up again, he spun at least 7 or 8 times before he abruptly let go and flung the microwave out. The force of the microwave was even stronger than that of the boxing instructor. This guy must have practiced discus in the past. At the same time, the fat man was continuously making microwave ovens. As time passed, he was sweating profusely, but his speed was getting faster and faster. It was even better than a production line. If he could bring this ability out, he could probably create a Fat Man brand behind Media and Super. As time passed, the orc laborers that were pulled away slowly came closer. Peasant chose 5 to 6 normal gamers who were fast but weak. He asked them to follow Qin Guang's method of spitting saliva to infuriate the fell energy orcs. Then he led the orcs in circles to pull the small monsters. These normal players also performed exceptionally well. They were actually able to drag 4 or 5 orc laborers around in circles at the same time. Only 1 or 2 orc laborers managed to escape. One of the normal gamers pulled the 2 orcs away to buy more time for Qin Guang. Finally, after 4 minutes of Qin Guang's action, the fell energy orc fell to the ground. Its originally indestructible neck was broken. The last slash was taken by Qin Guang. The reward points were distributed immediately. After calculating Qin Guang's last slash, they were distributed according to their contribution points. Each orc had 1,000 points. Qin Guang received 700 points. The rest of the normal gamers received at least a few points, and some received tens of points. Unexpectedly, the one who received the most points wasn't the discus thrower, the mixed martial arts instructor, the magical archer, or the sniper. It was the fat man who provided firepower support for the microwave ovens. He received 90 points. The gamers had complicated expressions. The Red Bull used by the fat man to produce the microwave ovens was pooled by the gamers, but he received the most benefits. Qin Guang stood on the disappearing corpse of the orc and observed the undercurrent of the crowd. He was annoyed by the gamers' schemes. Keep your strange gazes to yourselves. It's reasonable for the gamers to have the upper hand in this mission. Otherwise, if any of you can conjure some shot put or javelin, wouldn't it be better? As for me, it's only right that I get the most, right? Listen up, I don't care what kind of clique you have, but at least at this stage, everyone has to work together. His words were only symbolic and the others might not listen. It was hard to tell what was in a man's heart. Qin Guang said again, "Okay, I've seen all of your performances. I'll take out 10 spots and let these 10 people make the last slash, okay? Whoever wants to purposely cause trouble for me showing up for work but not putting in the effort, then they can go and destroy themselves." Everyone's eyes were as bright as snow, who contributed more and who contributed less. Look at these guys who are in charge of luring the orcs. They're only doing a little and no one said anything. The speed-type players were bitter. It's not that we didn't say anything, it's that it's useless to say anything. It's not that we didn't say anything. It's just that it's useless to let us hold the microwave ovens and smash the orcs. Okay, the Protoss are moving again. Let's work harder. Qin Guang clapped his hands together and without any rest, he set his sights on another fell orc. Yu Ting, who was fighting the second fell energy beastman, was startled when he saw this. Isn't that guy tired? Yu Ting's guess was right. At this time, Qin Guang was not physically tired at all. He looked like he had used up a lot of energy, but in fact he did not even drink Red Bull. The fell orc, which was like a poison to others, entered his body, but was completely suppressed by his Earth Exploder Arcana, and became nutrients instead. After killing the first orc, Qin Guang took a short breather, and all the injuries on his body healed. He was full of health. It did not take long for the second fell orc to die in Qin Guang's hands. On the other side, the virtual Protoss led by Yu Ting had finished before Qin Guang, but Yu Ting himself was sitting on the ground resting. He was sweating unbelievably. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Yu Ting said to Vesni, "I can't remember the last time I sweated. Lord Yu Ting, this may be a good thing. In the celestial realm, your power is too strong, and it is difficult to experience the feeling of challenge. We came to this mysterious game to become ordinary players, and this special experience will bring us benefits." Yu Ting nodded and looked in the direction of Qin Guang. "Yes, I hope that when my projection returns to my real body, it can make my power, which has been stagnant for many years, grow again." Vesni also looked in the direction of Yu Ting's gaze. "Noon, this guy is quite efficient. No, he is killing the orcs a little slower than us." "Then he what?" Under Vesni's slightly horrified gaze, Qin Guang, who had only rested for less than 10 seconds, stood up and walked towards another orc laborer. As for the other ordinary players, they had already started pulling the orcs as soon as he sat down, and now they had some space. Qin Guang jogged over, chasing after a fell orc. He picked up a shell from the ground and threw it forward, hitting the back of the fell orc's head. "Bastard! Come and fight me." The orc turned and roared, waving his arms as he chased after Qin Guang. Qin Guang spat out a mouthful of saliva, which stuck on the tip of the orc's nose, and then turned and ran slowly. Yu Ting and Vesni were completely dumbfounded. What was this guy's body made of? Why was he more like a god than a god? No, we're only a projection here. Our power has been greatly weakened, and we're constantly being suppressed by the laws of the world. It's normal that we're weaker than the local boss, Noon. It's just that this guy is a little too overpowered. No, we can't let him continue like this. We have to increase our efficiency. Otherwise he will rob all the orcs. Yu Ting struggled to stand up and gritted his teeth as he spoke. Vesni asked worriedly, Lord Yu Ting, are you all right? Yu Ting's palm emitted lightning as he took out his lightning spear and shook his head. I'm fine. As the two gods conversed, before the ordinary gamer could lure the orcs, Qin Guang had already started fighting the orcs. Time passed quickly. An hour later, Qin Guang had killed tens of fell orcs. Then he said to the ordinary gamers, Good, we'll start assigning the orcs. First, peasant. Why is it her? This isn't fair. She didn't exchange for a weapon and she didn't deal much damage to the orcs. A member of the mixed martial arts team questioned. Qin Guang looked at him coldly and said, I have thousands of reasons to explain to you. For example, peasants' leadership was praiseworthy. But I don't have the time to deal with you. I'll use the simplest reason to give it to you. I'm willing. Do you have any objections? There was dead silence and the gamers looked at each other. They didn't expect the gamers to be so unreasonable that afternoon. This is not a house, nor is it your ivory tower school, nor is it your company. This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. Here, the strong have the final say, and the weak have no right to question. I won't take care of you like your father takes care of an obedient child. If you can accept my decision, follow me. If not, get lost and find a corner to squat in. Qin Guang's expression became colder, and the gamer kept quiet out of fear. Seeing that it was enough, Qin Guang continued, I know that many of you feel that it's unfair, and you might be unhappy with me. You might feel that I'm stronger than all of you right from the start. But I'm not interested in explaining to you because any of you could die in the next mission. What does it matter if I'm unhappy with a corpse? I'm sure you're all elites in real life and have your own pride. You might not listen to me. I won't waste my breath on you. If you're unhappy with me, think of ways to become stronger and surpass me. When your fist is bigger than mine, you have the final say. Now listen to me. The hale and hearty elder clapped his hands and said, Mr. Dang is right, that's how it should be. Let's continue with the next assignment. It's you, Mr. Dang. Qin Guang nodded and pointed at the elder. Seeing that the elder was hesitant, he said, I'll say this one last time. I don't want to explain my decision to anyone. If you want to listen, listen. If not, get lost. On the other side, Divine Emperor Yu Ting was sitting in a corner with a pale face. He felt his balls aching as he watched Qin Guang act pretentiously to his heart's content. In the beginning, after he began to shorten his rest time and increase his killing speed, the virtual Protoss team's efficiency temporarily surpassed Qin Guang's. But as time went on, he became more and more tired, and his efficiency became lower and lower. Red Bull could relieve physical fatigue, but it could not stop his mental exhaustion. Every time he completed a kill, the time he needed to rest became longer and longer. Gradually he was left behind by the Noon team. Damn it, my projection's willpower is too weak. It's not even a trillionth of my real body's willpower. I lost to him in willpower. Yu Ting waved his arms angrily. Vesni looked at him and did not say anything. She knew that the Divine Emperor Yu Ting did not need comfort. Forget it. That's it for the third mission. Yu Ting stood up and walked to the next fell energy orc with his lightning spear. At this time, Qin Guang was not in the mood to eavesdrop on Yu Ting. He looked strong on the surface, but in fact he was not relaxed at all. He was also cursing. Yu Ting, this bastard, is he trying to force me to death? You're a Divine Emperor. Is it worth it to steal kills from a mortal like me? Are you trying to let us get 2 more kills to eat? Besides, what's the use of snatching so many reward points? Silently looking at the game interface that has reached more than 23,000 reward points, and then looking at the ability enhancement that is still gray, Qin Guang really can't speak. If he had the habit of keeping a diary, he would write like this. At first, I thought I could get 20 points like everyone else, but then I realized I was wrong. So I began to look forward to 2,000 points, but I could only eat soup. Later, I thought that 20,000 points would be of some use, but the cruel reality told me that it was all an illusion. Time continued to pass, and after another hour, Qin Guang finished killing 10 ordinary players, including the MMA coach, the sniper, the elven archer, the hale and hearty old man, and the genius junior high school student. As for the kid who defected to the enemy, he could only eat soup. Also, the fatty did not get a share. In fact, he contributed quite a lot, but considering that he could make a lot of money from the bonus after each kill, there was no need to compensate him. Congratulations players for successfully completing the third mission. You will have half an hour to rest. As the announcement sounded, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and fell down in exhaustion. Qin Guang just sat cross-legged on the ground. He had to maintain his image as a master. Chapter 1171. Peasant sneaked to his side like a thief and sat down. Mr. Dang, I have 2,000 points to exchange for the second awakening. Oh, that's good. But don't be proud. Did you see that fat guy? And the fridge beside him. Are this guy's clothes? Peasant turned his head and guessed, is it because after the second awakening, there isn't a novice combat uniform? It's probably because his body can withstand the energy. He's lucky to have a suitable awakening ability. He got a lot of bonus points. Qin Guang said meaningfully, luck is a part of strength. According to the experience of Mission 2, Mission 4 should be simple. I won't let my guard down this time. Of course, everyone will learn from their mistakes. Everyone will be more careful. Alright, exchange for abilities. Qin Guang said as he observed the gamers. After 3 consecutive missions, the normal gamers were improving rapidly. From fear to calmness, from strangers to familiarity, from confusion to clarity of purpose. Even their gazes became more determined. Peasant, who was beside Qin Guang, closed his eyes, and his body was shrouded in flowing light. When she opened her eyes again, the newbie combat uniform on her body had also disappeared abruptly. She wasn't naked. Instead, she was wearing a plain cotton clothing. Qin Guang felt that peasant's clothing was the standard equipment given by the system after creating a new account in the online game. 0 attributes, 0 bonuses, and 0 benefits. How is it? How do you feel? Qin Guang asked. Peasant's expression froze. The hourglass in my shop increased in price. Ah? That's it? Nothing else? Not really. My ability is enhanced, but if I'm still an orc laborer, it won't be of any use. It's alright. There are specializations. Every ability has a suitable entry point, just like the microwave oven fat guy. Alright, you go do what you need to do. I need to rest. Qin Guang waved his hand and closed his eyes. Thanks to the countless years of fighting in the world of the cup, even though his mind had been sealed in the past, after experiencing so much and comprehending so many things between life and death, his nerves were much more resilient than he had imagined. Lu Li rarely praised him, but in this aspect he was truly talented. However, this time, in order to steal kills from the virtual Protoss advance party led by Divine Emperor Yu Ting, he was exhausted both physically and mentally. After closing his eyes and dreaming for half an hour, Qin Guang slowly opened his eyes. The 4th mission was coming. The 4th mission is about to begin. All players, please keep your distance from each other. Quest hint: kill your own mirror image. Sure enough, the massacre mission would never play its cards according to the norm. There was no such thing as a high difficulty mission and a bonus question. Mission 4's hint was very meaningful. Qin Guang couldn't help but be curious. He could roughly imagine other people's mirror images, but what about his own? A peerless master? The strange-looking Earth Mine-Eater that had finally revealed its true appearance? An actor? Or was it something else? Also, when they saw their own image, would it be their current appearance or their true appearance? Also, what did the massacre world mean when it separated everyone? Did everyone have a separate battle platform? Was it separate or connected? Could others see us while we were fighting with our mirror images? As Qin Guang's thoughts ran wild, the final countdown came. At this time there was no one around him, and the other teams reluctantly scattered. Everyone's team had just matured, and everyone in the same team had just finished sharing their awakened abilities with each other, but in the blink of an eye, they had to fight alone again. With the countdown of 3, 2, 1, the ancient Roman Colosseum shook violently as if there was an earthquake. The ground under everyone slowly rose with a rumble. After about 3 minutes, everyone stood on a circular platform with a diameter of 15 meters. No one dared to be careless and looked around vigilantly. But this was not the end. After a short pause, a light curtain rose from the edge of the round platform. The higher it went, the narrower it became. Finally, it formed a dome that looked like a pot lid. Qin Guang nodded with satisfaction. Although he couldn't peep at others, others couldn't see his ability either. He especially had to be on guard against Divine Emperor Yu Ting. After the dome was completely sealed, the cheers of the audience in the Colosseum couldn't be heard. It became completely silent inside, and the atmosphere was even a little stifling. Qin Guang stood up straight, looking around and listening in all directions. He was on guard at any time. He wasn't sure what his mirror image would look like and where it would come from. If it's as sinister as me, then it will definitely be difficult to deal with, Qin Guang thought. Just as he was thinking about this, a round hole suddenly appeared in the air in front of him about 3 to 4 meters high. This was the space-time tunnel that Qin Guang was familiar with. He didn't know where the other end of the space-time tunnel led to, but he could only see rays of golden light coming from it. Qin Guang squinted his eyes and stared at the hole. He held his breath and didn't dare to be careless. The light from the hole became brighter and brighter, and Qin Guang ridiculed, "It can't be that a sun will jump out from inside, right?" As he said this, the light inside was so bright that he almost couldn't open his eyes. It was even more uncomfortable than raising his head to look at the sun on a hot summer's afternoon. But he definitely couldn't close his eyes at this time. If the sinister mirror image took the opportunity to sneak attack him, wouldn't his face be covered in tears? Therefore, he forcibly poured his inner strength into his eyes and stared at that place. After a few short seconds, 2 lines of clear tears gushed out from his eyes. His eyes were burned. But this didn't matter. Even if his eyeballs exploded, they could grow back. Qin Guang expressed that his emotions were stable. Finally, after a brief moment, the dazzling light gradually dimmed and Qin Guang could finally see the silhouette of a person that floated out of the cave. Well, the mirror image really could only learn the surface. It couldn't learn the sinister side of the old man. It seemed that this world of slaughter mission was as stable as a dog. It didn't even know how to sneak attack. Wait, what the hell is this? Why is my mirror image so handsome? He stared at himself, in midair with his eyes wide open. His face was full of disbelief. This man was wrapped in a shining golden armor from head to toe. He looked very much like the legendary Saint Seiya. He was tall and straight and his long hair was elegant. The most important thing was that his face was not Qin Guang's current bald appearance, but his original appearance. But Qin Guang couldn't understand. He had seen this face for so many years that he was used to it. He was usually not praised as a handsome guy. But why did he feel that his mirror image could be so handsome? Did I unknowingly become a narcissist? Or is there a deviation in my own aesthetics? The golden armored mirror image slowly floated down from the hole and landed 3 or 4 meters in front of Qin Guang. Its empty eyes looked at Qin Guang. Qin Guang suddenly understood. The reason why he felt that this golden armored mirror image was very handsome was either because of the effect of the golden saint suit on him, or because he had a temperament that he currently didn't have. I really don't want to admit it. In fact, I was talking about the temperament of a tall, rich, and handsome man. Suddenly, the golden armored mirror image bent his body slightly. Qin Guang didn't dare to be careless. He was also ready to fight. A few seconds later, the golden armored mirror image flew out like a cannonball. Its speed was so fast that even Qin Guang was shocked. Seeing that the situation was not good, Qin Guang flew back while cursing in his heart. You said it was a mirror image, but it was clearly fast. Of course, retreating was not as fast as moving forward. In the blink of an eye, he was caught by the golden armored mirror image, and then the golden armored mirror image punched him in the face. Whether it was the posture or the expression when the punch, the mirror image was almost the same as him. Qin Guang thought that although this was a mirror image, it seemed to be a little faster than him. Maybe it was also stronger than him. Let me try. Well, it was indeed a little abnormal. Qin Guang thought while flying in the air. Just now, he tried to punch, but the golden armored mirror image went all out in every move. Qin Guang's right fist, which only used 70% of his strength, was easily broken, and then the punch hit his chest and sent him flying. At least 3 of his ribs were broken. However, he didn't have a chance to breathe at all. Before he landed, the golden armored mirror image was already waiting for him below. In the air, Qin Guang endured the pain and twisted his body. His inner strength burst out, and he used the lightness skill that he hadn't used for a long time. His body changed directions in the air cleverly, and when he landed, he barely avoided the golden armored mirror image's punch from below. However, he still couldn't escape the mirror image's elbow attack after the instantaneous change of move. He was accurately hit in the abdomen by a Dongpa elbow, and he flew horizontally on the ground. He still didn't have any chance to breathe, and the mirror image continued to chase him. Fortunately, this time he was close to the ground and Qin Guang had a place to borrow strength. He jumped with the tip of his toes, and his whole body shot out like lightning, barely avoiding the leg that fell from the sky. It had only been a few seconds since they started fighting, but Qin Guang had been in danger 3 times in a row. He didn't dare to imagine what it would be like for other ordinary players to face their own mirror images. After finally seizing the opportunity to get up, Qin Guang didn't care about anything, and just ran wildly to open up the distance. The golden armored mirror image chased after him, and he ran desperately in front. He ran laps around the small arena, and he didn't want to face his opponent head-on. At first, his movements were a little staggered, but after a few minutes, his injuries gradually recovered, and he ran naturally and smoothly. While Qin Guang was running, he was also racking his brains for a way to change the situation. Although he had the ability to regenerate, he would exhaust his ability sooner or later if he kept being chased like this. It seems that the mirror image can't catch up with me? As he ran, he suddenly realized this. When he looked back, it was as he expected. The distance between him and the golden armored mirror image was almost constant. Qin Guang immediately understood this principle. It wasn't that the mirror image was faster than him. It was just that he had been too careless before, and he didn't completely squeeze out all his potential and burst out with the strongest speed, which reflected the mirror image's speed. It was the same principle, including the punch that put him at a disadvantage at the beginning of the fight. The so-called fourth mission to kill one's mirror image was actually to defeat oneself, and to be the strongest self. To complete the fourth mission, the gamer had to squeeze out all his potential. That was because every gamer's opponent was a version of himself who had used up all his potential.